Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The story of the lucky boy in poverty who, against all odds, won a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's magical candy factory. An enduring tale about acceptance and learning self-control. Wonka himself is one of the most enigmatic and charming literary/cinematic figures of modern times. I got into Willy Wonka as a whole in late 2021, and being the completionist that I am, I wanted to know more, a lot more, about this franchise, which is why I made this. Yes, I have spent the last, several weeks at least doing research and digging up as much information as I could about the entire Willy Wonka franchise. The result is this massive iceberg filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated Willy Wonka knowledge. There is stuff in here ranging from very common knowledge to some of the most obscure Willy Wonka related stuff I could find. And whether or not you're a Wonka or doll fan in general, there's a good chance that you will come out of this video having learned something new about the Wonka brand as a whole. And before we get into this video, I want to talk about some important things about the iceberg itself. I actually drew this iceberg in its entirety in Autodesk Sketchbook, so this iceberg is entirely original. Although the art is kind of bad, I'm sorry. If I state a source is in the description, then it's especially important to the context of whatever entry I'm referring to, and that I recommend you explore it yourself if you want to find out more about a specific subject. Also, there will be a small number of entries on this iceberg that delve into subjects that will be triggering to some audience members. However, I will be providing proper warnings when we do get to these entries. Also, huge thanks to Pikachow and his absolutely stellar Kirby Iceberg video for inspiring me to make my Wonka Iceberg video. I definitely recommend checking out his video, which I am linking in the description. And lastly, I would like to thank each and every person who decided to click on this video and give it some attention. This whole project has taken me literal months to complete, and I would greatly appreciate any and every bit of love and support this video can get. Anyway, I need to stop delaying the inevitable. Let's get to the video. Sit back, relax, grab a Wonka bar and a Funko soda. This is gonna be a long video. Roald Dahl. Born in 1916, Roald Dahl has made many beloved children's novels, including James and the Giant Peach, The Big Friendly Giant, and, of course, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He was a very rambunctious individual, always looking for adventure, probably why he never did well academically and almost died in a plane crash while serving as a pilot during World War II. Sadly, what did kill him was some kind of unknown infection. He was 74 when he died. May he rest in peace. Gene Wilder. Ah yes, the man, the myth, the legend himself, the man who brought Willy Wonka to life, Gene Wilder. Born in 1933 under the name Jerome Silberman, I am so sorry if I butchered that name. He got his early start in comedy thanks to some words of advice from his doctor in regards to Wilder's mother, who was suffering from heart disease at the time. His acting career started taking off in the 60s and 70s with roles in films such as Bonnie and Clyde, The Producers, and most famously, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He would later go on to work on other movies, including Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. In his later years, he would give up on the show business and ease into writing. Sadly, however, he died in August 2016 due to Alzheimer's disease. May he rest in peace. Original book. Published in 1964 by Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory follows the adventures of ultra-lucky Charlie Bucket and 5 other lucky kids as they tour Willy Wonka's magical candy factory. While on the tour, the kids are disqualified thanks to their worst traits getting the better of them. Charlie is the last contender in the contest, and not only wins a life supply of chocolate, but Wonka donates the entire factory to him and his family thanks to Charlie's good nature. Since its publication, the book has become a classic amongst kids and adults alike. Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers. Ah yes, the television and streaming giants that have been in business for many decades at this point. Paramount Pictures initially owned the rights to the 1971 film, but a few years after its release, Warner Brothers took ownership of the franchise. Warner Brothers is, of course, a massive multimedia giant who's been in the business since the early 20s. Pure imagination. One of the most iconic songs from the 1971 film, Gene Wilder sings this as the contest winners explore the chocolate room for the first time. This is one of the most popular songs from the film, and the song's leitmotif can be heard throughout many points in the film's soundtrack. 2005 adaptation. Released in July of 2005, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is a 2005 reimagining of the book of the same name, with many more similarities between it and the book and the original 1971 film in the book. As for what I think of this film, it's okay. I like how much it adapts from the original book. I love Johnny Depp, don't get me wrong. I'm really glad he's finally been able to prove himself victorious during all this Amber Heard bullcrap that's been going on for the past, I don't know, decade now or something. But his portrayal of Willy Wonka really isn't the best, and it's a Tim Burton film. I don't like Tim Burton. Golden tickets. During the events of the story, Willy Wonka sends out 5 golden tickets hidden inside the wrappers of Wonka bars. 5 kids from around the world are lucky enough to find them. Foodie Augustus Gloop, spoiled brat Veruca Salt, infamous gum chewer Violet Beauregard, TV addict Mike TV, I still cannot get over how amazing that name is, and poor Charlie Bucket. The golden tickets allow the lucky winners the lifetime of chocolate and a personal tour of Willy Wonka's factory. Wonka bars. One of Wonka's most popular confectionaries. Wonka bars are big old bars of chocolate. At least I think they're supposed to be. There were real-world Wonka bars that were produced by Nestle, which is something we'll talk about later, and those Wonka bars were just giant graham crackers dipped in chocolate. I think in most other media they're just solid bars of chocolate though. In the films and books, Willy Wonka puts 5 lucky golden tickets beneath the wrappers of 5 select Wonka bars, finding the kids we mentioned earlier. Everlasting Gobstopper. An invention of Wonka's, it's a candy designed for poorer kids. It is essentially a multi-flavor jawbreaker that never gets smaller no matter how much is being sucked on. It's only mentioned in the book and 2005 movie, but in the 1971 film it's used as a part of the plot, where a person claiming to be one of Wonka's rivals, Slugworth, tells the other kids to give him a gobstopper in exchange for a buttload of cash. It is shown that Charlie, after getting yelled at by Wonka, actually gave his gobstopper back to Wonka, prompting Charlie and his family to win the contest and inherit the factory. In the original book, they were described as being sort of like marbles. In the film, they're shaped like these weird sea mines with a different color on each protrusion. Turns out that these were actually candies made in the real world. More on that later. The Oompa Loompas. The wonderful Oompa Loompas are a race of small pygmy people that Wonka adopted from their dangerous homeland to work at his factory. Throughout the film, they keep things in the factory in check and escort the loser kids and parents out of the factory, each time singing a cute little educational music number. While they're all around the same conceptually in all adaptations of Willy Wonka, throughout the adaptations their appearance differs wildly, as we'll get into more later. You lose! Good day, sir! This line was spouted by an angry Wonka who was ranting and raving at Charlie and Grandpa Joe for quote-unquote breaking the contract rules when the two snuck some fizzy lifting drinks and getting fingerprints in the fan duct of the fizzy lifting drink room. Wonka's angry ranting here has become one of the most famous highlights from the 1971 movie, especially the specific line of, "You lose! Good day, sir!" The 5 lucky winners. As we mentioned previously, the 5 golden ticket winners are Augustus Gloop, played by Michael Bullner, Veruca Salt, played by Julie Dawn Cole, Violet Beauregard, played by Denise Nickerson, Mike TV, played by Paris Zimmerman, and poor Charlie Bucket, played by Peter Ostrom. These 5 lucky kids were able to experience Willy Wonka's Magical Factory, but only one Charlie Bucket was pure of heart enough to witness the true prize. Being an heir to Willy Wonka's entire factory, we get the gist of things by now. Moral of the films and books. 2 big lessons to learn from pretty much any iteration of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are: imagination and creativity are some of the most powerful things the human mind possesses, and that not possessing all around unfavorable traits, greed, gluttony, addiction, can lead you very far in life. The Oompa Loompas say it themselves. Creativity is what brought these characters to life after all, and is what founded many things we're familiar with and comfortable today. Mel Stewart. Born in 1928, Mel Stewart has directed many films, including the 1971 classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Some of his other works include 1972's One is a Lonely Number and 1978's Mean Dog Blues. He also wrote a 1971 Willy Wonka documentary book, which we will talk about later. He has also been featured in a couple of behind-the-scenes and promotional anniversary videos for the 1971 film. Sadly, in 2012, he died of melanoma cancer at the age of 83. Okay, so that was layer 1. Pretty popular stuff, right? I mean, aside from maybe the information about Mel Stewart that I listed, I think anyone who even knows about Willy Wonka knows about all this stuff by now. But then again, this is pretty surface level knowledge. I think it's time we get a tad bit more obscure. On to layer 2! Wonka Candy Company. I mean, come on, what's a movie about candy without some kind of candy tie-in? During the OG movie's production, one of the movie's producers, David L. Wolper, we will get into later, made a deal with Quaker Oats of all companies. After some negotiation, the then Brinker Confection, now Willy Wonka Candy Company, was born. While the original Wonka bar never did see much, if any, success with consumers, other candies like the Everlasting Gobstopper and Scrumdiddlyumptious Bar were a hit with the public. Other early products included Super Scrunch Bar and the far less popular Peanut Butter Oompas. The brand has jumped ownership a few times, Sunmar Corporation in 1975, and later Nestle acquired the rights in the late 80s, and since have produced some of the most iconic candies in history. My favorite examples being the bottle caps and nerds. Sadly, however, the brand was discontinued in the mid-2010s, changing its name to the Nestle Candy Shop, much to the chagrin of many people, myself included. The candies and chocolates that came from the original company are now owned under the Ferrero brand. David L. Wolper. Born in 1920s New York City, Wolper has been directing films since the early 50s. Some of his films include The Hellstorm Chronicle, where he was an executive producer, Los Angeles Confidential, released in 1997, and the star of the show, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971. The Hellstorm Chronicle actually won Wolper an Academy Award and a Jean Herschelt Humanitarian Award for his involvement in the 1984 Summer Olympics. Sadly, he died in 2010 in his then home in Beverly Hills due to heart and Parkinson's disease complications. He is buried in Forest Lawn Memorial Park. May he rest in peace. WonkaVision, an invention of Wonka's, his greatest invention. It's a giant camera that is able to transport large objects, turning them into smaller versions of themselves, able to be broadcast to television screens across the globe. Of course, during the events of the book and movies, Mike TV can't get over the fact of literally being on television and tests Wonka's machine on himself, turning him tiny in the process. Don't worry, he leaves the factory just fine and paper thin. Apparently, he looks like a Paper Mario character now. The Great Glass Wonkabator. This is a large elevator Wonka uses to transport himself around his massive factory. At the end of the factory tour, Wonka invites Charlie and Grandpa Joe to ride up with him in the sky, smashing through a glass roof, where the two are told they are inheriting the entire chocolate factory. However, their adventure technically doesn't end there, as seen in the original book's sequel. Speaking of which, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. This is another Roald Dahl story published in 1972, acting as a sequel to the original book. In the book, Wonka and the Bucket family enter the Space Hotel USA, and a lot of nonsensical chaos ensues. Seriously, you thought the original book was crazy? Wait till you read this. I'm going to keep most of the plot ambiguous so as to not spoil anything. I will be covering a couple of interesting points from this book on this iceberg, but trust me, this whole entire book is wiggity whack. However, due to the original film not initially doing too well at the box office and some disagreements between Dahl and the movie crew, the second book was never adapted into the movie. Wondrous Boat Ride. After touring the Chocolate Room, Wonka and the gang get on a ferry ride across the Chocolate River to get to the next place on the tour, the Inventing Room. However, in order to get there, they must go through, a small little bump in the road. Only the most traumatic acid trip of a gondola ride to ever exist in cinema history. I think anyone who has watched this movie in its entirety can tell you they got scared by this somehow. The horrifying visuals along with Wonka turning into a singing psychopath make it a truly terrifying experience. Hey, at least they got to the Inventing Room unharmed. Meal Gum. One of Wonka's most innovative and strange sweets. A gum that, when chewed, simulates a full 3-course meal. When Violet saw it, of course being the obnoxious gum-chewing champion she is, she wants to try it. Well, she does, even though Wonka tries, in massive sarcasm quotes, to stop her. However, karma bites her in the butt because when she gets to the dessert version of the simulated meal, which is blueberry pie, an error in the gum recipe straight up inflates her with blueberry juice, turning her into a giant blueberry. She then has to be taken to a juicing room by Oompa Loompas. I don't think I need to talk about this much more because anyone who's been on the internet for long enough can tell you why the whole blueberry scene is so infamous. Willy Wonka TikTok. Oh my goodness. If you search up Willy Wonka at all, then you're more than likely gonna come across this guy, Duke Depp, who has become infamous online, especially on TikTok, for his spot-on impression of the 2005 version of Willy Wonka. The dude's been canceled at least twice now for reasons I can't talk about. Overall, I honestly don't care too much. TikTok and celebrity drama is not my thing. I don't hate the guy. I'm not going to attack him personally or say his content is cringe or anything, because who the heck actually does that? I'm just saying that the kind of content he produces, it isn't my cup of tea. Awards. Both the book and film adaptations of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory have won many awards. The book has won a couple of awards, including the New England Roundtable of Children's Librarians Award, why is that a mouthful, Surrey School Award, Read Aloud Dibley Award, Millennium Children's Book Award, and the Blue Beer Book Award. The 1971 film was going to win like 2 awards, one for the film's musical score and the other for Gene Wilder's amazing acting performance as Willy Wonka, but it lost to Fiddler on the Roof. Whatever that movie is. Funko Pops. Funko is an American toy company founded in 1998, famous for their expansive line of Funko Pop figures. We get it. Of course, they have made multiple Willy Wonka Funko Pops over the years. The ones that I could find include Willy Wonka and Oompa Loompa, Charlie Bucket holding his golden ticket, Grandpa Joe, Veruca Salt, Violet as a Blueberry, Mike TV, and Augustus Gloop. There are other Funko branded pieces of Willy Wonka merch that have surfaced over the years, which I will be covering later down the iceberg. Wonka's limping. You know when Wonka first comes out of his office and he just sort of limps across the literal red carpet, then stops dead in his tracks and does a sort of spin dash and jumps to greet the kids? Well, it turns out that that limp is a big reason why Gene Wilder agreed to play Willy Wonka in the first place, as he would only agree to play the character as long as he was able to do that specific entrance. He said he wanted to do this, and I quote, "because from that time on, no one will know if I'm lying or telling the truth." What a smart man. Snowpiercer theory. This theory states that the 2013 sci-fi flick Snowpiercer is actually a sequel to the 1971 Willy Wonka film. The overall plots of the two films are incredibly similar, with many parallels between things like plot, character roles, symbolism, and more. I personally don't believe in this theory that much. In my eyes, it's kinda reachy and the parallels sound like coincidence, maybe even very minor inspiration more than anything else. I can get why people would believe in this theory though. If you want to read more into this, Keith Denninger has written a Screen Rant article that explains this theory a lot better than I ever could, so please check it out. I will be linking it in the description. Condescending Wonka.
Oh, you hate Mondays? I've never heard that feeling before. Go on. You must be new here. You replaced your DVD collection with Blu-ray? Tell me more about your financial troubles. You post all your problems of Facebook? That must solve everything.
I guess I should explain what this is. Condescending Wonka is a meme from the 2010s. That's just this still of Willy Wonka with text over it. That's literally it. Tom and Jerry crossover. In 2017, Warner Bros. Released an animated adaptation of the original 1971 Willy Wonka film with Tom and Jerry. It's literally just the 1971 film, but with Tom and Jerry, having their own major side plot throughout everything. I'll be honest, while I do kind of enjoy this film, it's a mindless feel-good story. That's all it is. Don't get me wrong, I love the visuals, they are really whimsical and colorful, especially for being animated. But at the same time, Tom and Jerry's side plot makes everything feel so unfocused. Especially considering how this is a reimagining of another film whose plot was already well established to begin with. Despite this glaringly obvious problem, this film still has its enjoyable moments. Call me immature if you want to, but the fact that the H word comes out of Tuffy's mouth unironically is genuinely one of the funniest things in the entire movie. Although the tunnel ride could have been creepier in my opinion. And the 5th golden ticket winner straight up being Droopy Dog, who actually forged his 5th golden ticket, was also pretty entertaining to see. As for the movie itself, considering the fact that this movie is aimed at young kids a lot more than the original movie, if you're above the age of like 11 or something, you'd have to be a hardcore Willy Wonka fan in order to get anything out of this. Golden Ticket board game. This is exactly what it sounds like. A Willy Wonka strategy board game designed by AC and Tisna and published by Buffalo Games. The goal is to try to collect Wonka bars using a combination of specialized game cards and character abilities to try and obtain as many golden tickets as possible. The game has a bunch of references to the movie, which is always a treat to see. So that was layer 2, still pretty knowledgeable stuff. But it does have pieces and facts that not everyone knows about. But how about we go deeper to somewhat lesser known facts and figures? On to layer 3! 2005 video game. To coincide with the release of the 2005 film, Global Star Software, now known as 2K Games, created a video game made for multiple platforms at the time, including the Game Boy Advance. Even though this was 2005, why couldn't you port it to the DS? What, were your simple Homo sapien brains too small to handle 2 smexy screens of the DS? Anyway, I think this goes without saying since this is a video game tie-in for a movie, but the game has received mixed to negative reviews from critics. Iron Studios art figure. To celebrate the original film's 50th anniversary in 2021, Iron Studios released an art figure. Said figure contains beautifully sculpted polystone Willy Wonka and 2 Oompa Loompas standing next to the chocolate river. I would buy it if it wasn't like over $200. I mean, this is limited edition, beautifully crafted, so I get why it's so expensive, but like, $200? Quaker Oats name change. There are a few reasons why the 1971 film's name was Willy Wonka instead of the first part being Charlie like in the original book. 1. Quaker Oats wanted to tie in the film with their Willy Wonka candy brand, and 2. Willy Wonka was a far more recognizable name than just Charlie. As for the Quaker Oats Company itself, it was founded in 1877 in Ohio by Henry Parsons Crowell, and of course, the company mostly specializes in oatmeal! Munich, Germany. The original 1971 film was shot in Munich, the capital of Bavaria, a state in Germany. One of the most common misconceptions is that the film was shot in the UK, probably because characters in the film and book were British. The reason why they shot the movie in Germany was because it was far less expensive compared to shooting it in the US, and they wanted to shoot it in a location that wouldn't be recognizable to American audiences to sort of set in that whimsical fantasy setting. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was an American-born singer and dancer, best known for helping people of color in the entertainment industry. He was originally going to play the candy store owner and sing the classic The Candyman song. However, he was cut from the movie due to it being thought that having such a big name associated with a side character would be rather distracting. While he never did get to sing The Candyman in the movie, he has gone to sing it himself in subsequent years and has gotten famous for it. 1971 chocolate mold making toy. To commemorate the original movie's release, they released a tie-in toy that allowed you to have a chocolate factory in your own kitchen. The kit contains some plastic molds for chocolate. Some of these molds contain cereal characters for some reason, an instruction book, and some Wonka bar wrappers. Considering this was the early 70s, the instructions told you that you had to put chocolate chips into a plastic bag, melt the chocolate with boiling water, then you'd have to poop the chocolate out of the bag into the molds. I think the only reason people even know about this thing's existence is because Lucky Penny Shop did a video on it. I would definitely recommend watching it if you want to know more. Pure Imagination covers. Considering how popular the Pure Imagination song is, as well as the 1971 film as a whole, it makes sense that people would want to do covers on the song. The 2 most popular covers are the one that Maroon 5 did a handful of years back, and a much darker version of the song done by Fiona Apple. I would definitely recommend checking out both of these. They are fantastic. Where the Wonka kids are now. The 5 kids from the film were kids from the 70s. Funnily enough, a lot of them gave up acting sometime after the movie's release. Peter Ostrom grew up to be a veterinarian, Julie Dawn Cole continued her acting career and even published a memoir about her times working on the set of Willy Wonka and would eventually become a psychotherapist. Denise Nickerson would continue acting for a few years before becoming a receptionist. Paris Thurman would slowly ease out of being behind the big screen and into traveling and a few other hobbies, and Michael Bolner is now a tax lawyer in the town where the original Willy Wonka was filmed, funnily enough, Nestle Company. The Nestle Company was the owner of the real-life tie-in Wonka candy brand since the 80s. Under this ownership, they produced the ever-so-fancy Wonka Exceptionals and the Nerds and Bottle Cap candies. The company itself, founded in 1866, is currently stationed in Switzerland, and as everyone knows, the company specializes in producing numerous types of food and beverages. Regular show references. There have been 2 major Willy Wonka references throughout the regular show's lifespan. First one appeared in the 35th episode of Season 3, Prankless, where Muscle Man recites a parody of Wonka's boat ride poem, and in the 32nd episode of Season 7, Pam I Am, Benson and his crush almost die to an anti-gravity fan, but then kind of not really burp their way to safety, a reference to the scene with Charlie and Grandpa Joe burping their way to safety out of the fizzy lifting drink room. Reactions were genuine. The director of the film gave instructions for the child actors to not see the chocolate room until they actually began filming in the locations itself, making all the kids' reactions to the chocolate room genuine. Also genuine was the terror and horror on everyone's faces when Willy Wonka went psycho during the boat ride. Isn't he the best? Also genuine were Charlie and Grandpa Joe's reactions when Wonka was seething with rage near the end of the film, because the 2 technically broke the rules of the tour. In initial takes of the scene, Wilder was actually a lot calmer, but decided to be angry on subsequent takes so as to give the scene more of a shock factor. 2005 Oompa Loompas were played by 1 person. In the 1971 film, there were a total of 10 Oompa Loompa actors. However, in multiple areas of Wonka media, it is sort of inferred that there's supposed to be a lot more Oompa Loompas than just 10. We got to see this in the 2005 film, where there are a ton of them running around. Ironically enough, it turns out that all the Oompa Loompas in the 2005 film were actually played by 1 guy, Deep Roy. Thanks to the marvels of what was at the time modern technology, the producers and SFX team could just sort of clone Roy and put a bunch of digital versions of him onto a scene seamlessly. Old Willy Wonka website. This was the original website that was owned by the Nestle Company, where kids could explore a digitized version of the chocolate factory. There were a lot of things you could do, like playing flash games and learn about sweepstakes going on at the time. Some of these things we'll be talking about later down the iceberg. Sadly, however, when the Nestle brand discontinued their Wonka branch, they took the old website along with it, and trying to enter Wonka.com as a URL now simply redirects you to the Ferrero corporate website. Exploding candies. One of Wonka's confectionaries only really seen in the 1971 film and nowhere else. They are, and I'm not joking, candies that literally explode in your mouth when you eat them. As we see when the unfortunate Mike TV tries eating one when the gang goes into the inventing room. Wonka says it's great for your enemies, apparently. How Wonka never got in trouble for this is honestly beyond me. Funko vinyl soda figure. Here is another piece of Funko branded Wonka merch. This time it's for their vinyl soda series, where you have a little Wonka vinyl figurine inside of a little plastic soda can, and there is also one with a Oompa Loompa too. Apparently the vinyl sodas have a rare chance of having a special version of the character inside the can known as a chaser or something. I don't know, I know nothing about this. The rare variant of Willy Wonka is him holding a golden ticket, and the rare variant of the Oompa Loompa is him holding a Wonka bar. Okay, so that was layer 3. Again, this is common knowledge. Not too common, but then again, all of this stuff can be easily found with just a quick Google search or something, or watching a few YouTube videos. So nothing that obscure. And because of that, I say let's dive deeper into the chocolate river, onto layer 4. Wonka's World of Candy. In 2018, I think, game developer company Zynga published Wonka's World of Candy, a match 3 game with the usual match 3 game antics such as grinding and microtransactions. Yay! Man, I wish I was still in the 2000s back when match 3 games were actually good. There isn't much else to talk about here. It's literally your typical match 3 game just with a Willy Wonka aesthetic. Don't get me wrong, there's some fun interactive things you can do, but all in all, it's just The game's visuals consist of hyper-realistic sprites of Wonka and company, and there's a lot of quotes from the movie haphazardly thrown about everywhere. The game also uses 3D models for the overworld hub, and I have to ask, why have these not been ripped to like Spiders Racers or something? These are 3D models of Willy Wonka characters. I need these in my life right now. 2013 musical, The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory musical, is of course based off the original book of the same name. The musical originally premiered in 2013 at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, with the musical itself eventually reworked in 2017 for the Luntfate Theatre. It has also seen showings in Buffalo, New York, Australia, and Miami, Florida. As a whole, the musical has won awards for Best Lighting and Costume Design and Outstanding Puppet Design. Coin Pusher Game. Yes, there is a Willy Wonka-themed coin pusher. Eluat Entertainment brought to life the magical Willy Wonka arcade pusher in 1, 2, and 6 player variants, and it's the first Eluat coin pusher to have a screen to display the game. It apparently has character cards you can win, and you can even win a gold ticket if you're lucky enough. I've heard it's random, but I've also seen statistics and strategies for winning it, but considering how I've heard a lot of these coin pusher games are rigged, I honestly have no idea. Pawn Stars. In a season 14 episode of Pawn Stars, Rick Harrison and company went to a propeteer who had a bunch of props from the original 1971 film, which all totaled to over $700,000. Included in the haul was one of the golden eggs, some Wonka bar props, one of the golden tickets, and one of the everlasting gobstoppers seen in the film. At the end of the day, Harrison walked away with the gobstopper and Wonka bar, totaling to $105,000. I think those outrageous prices serve as a testament to just how classic and beloved the 1971 film is. Willy Wonka Slots. Another Zynga game about Willy Wonka, but this time it's one big fat friggin' slot machine. And yeah, I've never played the game. Apparently you have to be over 17 to play it. I don't know, and I don't care. While we're on the topic of slot machines, I guess I could talk about the actual physical slot machines that have been released over the years. There's the OG Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory slot machine, which has things like 2 slot monitors, and there's a little Wonkatonia boat that'll ride across the river and give you a prize based on where the boat lands. The Willy Wonka Pure Imagination slot machine also has the normal screen size. You can get bonuses by getting random golden eggs. And you can get, I'm not joking, a Veruca Salt Tantrum bonus. The World of Wonka slot machine has more modern curved screens, and you can grab an everlasting gobstopper for bonuses. The Willy Wonka Dream Factory slots has a 360-degree screen that spins around, and there's a sort of egg event wheel where you can gamble for extra spins. Willy Wonka slots, the Wonkavator has a much higher curved screen. It has a little bubble picked minigame where you can earn prizes. 1971 film literary references. In the 1971 film, Willy Wonka makes a lot of references to classic literature, something that never showed up in the original book. Specifically, Wonka makes references to Shakespeare, Organ Nash, Oscar Wilde, John Keats, John Masefield, Hilaire Belloc, William Allingham, Neil Armstrong, Thomas Edison, Arthur O'Shaughnessy, Lewis Carroll, Horace Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and even the Bible. Man, Wonka is a book nerd. Anthony Newley. Born in 1931, Anthony Newley was a popular rock and roll artist who co-worked on the musical score for the 1971 Wonka film, as well as writing the lyrics for Goldfinger's title music. As for the former, he worked on the Pure Imagination theme. He was a musical genius all around, having been recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records, and he was even introduced into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1989. Sadly, however, he died in April 1999. Another person of note here is Leslie Bricusse. Born in 1931, Leslie Bricusse was a British musician and lyricist, best known for his work composing the music and lyrics heard in Dr. Dolittle, released in 1967, the 1992 Tom and Jerry movie, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. For the Willy Wonka film, he helped produce the Candyman and Pure Imagination themes. Sadly, he died in October of 2021. Fry and the Slurm Factory. Fry and the Slurm Factory is the Season 1 finale of Futurama, initially airing in November of 1999. In this episode, Fry, Bender, and Leela go to the wondrous Slurm Factory, where the titular Slurm drinks are made by the Grunka Lunka workforce. After some Willy Wonka-inspired hijinks, they get sucked into the belly of the beast, finding out that the factory is actually a hive for the Slurm Queen, the producer of Slurm. The three are captured, but Fry manages to save everyone and almost tells everyone about the shady underbusiness of Slurm, but due to his sheer addiction to the beverage, he decides to tell a white lie to keep the business up. This is making me want to watch Futurama now. Toothsome Chocolate Factory. This is a restaurant in Universal Orlando Resort that is kind of not really themed off of Willy Wonka. This restaurant has this chocolatey steampunk aesthetic, and it is one of those open kitchen restaurants where they make chocolate sweets and stuff right in front of you. Honestly, the only thing this has to do with Willy Wonka is that it's a chocolate emporium, and the only reason I put this on the iceberg is because it's the first thing that shows up when you Google Willy Wonka restaurant. And people do call this a Willy Wonka restaurant, so... Wonka Bite. During the events of Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, Wonka has Charlie's grandparents take pills called Wonka Bite to make them younger. However, they all take more than Wonka prescribed, with all of them turning into babies. Sans grandma Georgina, who literally vanishes out of existence. This prompts Charlie and Wonka to go to Minish Land to retrieve her spirit and give her Wonka Bite to make her older again. And yes, I just read that to you out loud, and it's canon in the book universe at least. Told you this book was crazy. Wooden chocolate. You remember those Wonka bars I mentioned previously? Yeah, well, I mean, when you really think about it, there's no way they were able to make so much chocolate bars in the 1971 film and not have any complications. There were so many bars in that scene in Veruca's peanut shelling center. How did they not make a huge chocolate mess everywhere? Well, the solution is simple. The chocolate in those Wonka bars was actually wood. Yes, they made rectangular prisms out of wood and pretended it was chocolate. I'll admit they did a darn good job fooling the audience. Fooled me too. Flash games. The Willy Wonka Candy Company used to have its own website, and they used to have a bunch of promotional flash games on there. One of these was Laffy Taffy Tetris, which is literally what it sounds like. Although I've heard rumors that the company actually got into trouble with the owners of Tetris, although I have no idea whether or not this is actually true. I don't even remember where I heard this, so take that with a grain of salt. Another game was Get Wonked Poppin' Prankster Game, which was a Brick Breaker clone with a Willy Wonka aesthetic. The last one I'm going to talk about here is Wonka Runs Collector, which was pretty much like all those Facebook bubble games with, again, Willy Wonka plastered onto it. The world of Wonka Flash games is honestly so big to the point where it frankly deserves its own video, so be expecting that sometime in the future. Unikitty and the Ice Pop Factory. Unikitty and the Ice Pop Factory is the 10th episode of Unikitty's 3rd season, with the episode itself airing in March of 2020. The episode revolves around a contest set up by Mrs. Ice Pop where one lucky winner will be able to tour her Ice Pop Factory. This results in a huge competition between Unikitty and company and Master Frown to find the lucky popsicle stick that declares them the winner. In the end, Richard finds the winning stick while all the other main characters are straight up sent to jail for crashing the Unikingdom's popsicle supply. At the very end of the episode, we get to see the inside of the factory, and instead of being some magical frozen ice cream themed wonderland, it's literally just a boring old popsicle factory with normal freezers and normal conveyor belts and all that stuff. Of course, Richard loves it. I honestly can't help but think it's hilarious, like the thought of the Willy Wonka books and films playing out like this episode, where the entire world is in an all-out dogfight just to find one single golden ticket. On a slightly related note, can I just say how sad it is that Unikitty got cancelled? Something about this show's zany antics just sort of stuck with me, and it's stuck with a lot of other people too. Monty Python, Spike Milligan, and others. The 6 members of the band Monty Python all expressed interest in playing Willy Wonka in the 1971 movie, but were denied the role due to them not being big enough names. Roald Dahl originally wanted British comedian Spike Milligan to play the part, but of course it never happened. English comedian and singer Pete Sellers apparently begged Dahl for the role, but again it never happened. Joel Grey was going to play the part, but he didn't get it because he was too short. I swear to God, I am not making that up. During auditions taking place in the Plaza Hotel in New York, Wilder was almost immediately given the role, leading to the classic Willy Wonka we know today. Pure Imagination, the story of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. This is about a half an hour length documentary about the 1971 film, specifically a sort of behind-the-scenes documentary. It covers topics like how Gene Wilder was chosen for the Wonka role, the kids' time on the set of the movie, and more. I would actually recommend watching it yourself since the documentary covers a bunch of stuff. I'll leave a link to the full thing in the description. This was also made into a book, apparently. Mel Stewart's daughter. Mel Stewart was the director behind the original 1971 movie. Turns out the only reason he essentially made the film to begin with was because of his daughter, Madeline Stewart. She had read the book and wanted him and David L. Wolper to produce the film. And the rest is history. Not Chocolate River. The chocolate river as seen in the 1971 film was only partially chocolate. In the start of the movie's production, the river was made out of 150,000 gallons of water and many buckets worth of chocolate powder. However, the mix would emit a sour odor, which was solved by adding salt, conditioner, and some chemicals. However, the waterfall only caused more problems. When it would pour into the river, it would result in a lot of foam, causing the surrounding water to turn white. So they got 2 cups of another chemical that controlled the foaminess of shampoo to put in the river mix. While the result was a success and built the chocolate river we know today, it sadly meant that the river was barely edible in the slightest and it smelled absolutely terrible. Most of the river itself was only about 2 feet deep, so they dug a little hole for when Augustus Gloop would fall in. Also, can we just acknowledge the fact that he straight up drank from that chocolate river? They had chemicals in that river. I don't... Augustus, why? Vinyl Idols figure. More Funko Pop merch, this time part of the Vinyl Idols series. And yes, Idols is spelled with a Z because of course it is. It's cool. From what I could find, the only Wonka-themed figure from this series is Willy Wonka himself, and that's it. Also, something I wanted to bring up on both this figurine and the art they use on the soda can vinyls, Willy Wonka's nose is pronounced to astronomical proportions. Seriously, they made this dude like freaking nose pass. Like, I know Gene Wilder had a pretty pronounced nose, but I mean, come on, this is just downright ridiculous. 2004 musical and Willy Wonka Jr. Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka is a stage play commissioned by Music Theatre International, with the play itself often being held by amateur performers, so like schools and local event centers pretty much. When Tim McDonald and Leslie Brookus got a hold of the rights, they wanted to, and I quote, create a live theatrical musical event that satisfied your expectations of the book and the film, but hopefully gave you another experience also. Leslie Brookus actually knew the music composer for the 1971 film, Anthony Newley, and were able to get permission to use his musical scores in the play. There are a few different versions of the play made by MIT, mostly for younger audiences. I think the most popular of these has to be Willy Wonka Jr., which runs for about an hour and is made for regular school systems in mind, therefore it has sort of a lower budget. There's also a kids version which is aimed at younger kiddos, this one being only about half an hour long with a more reduced cast. Candyland Willy Wonka Edition. I think this just makes way too much sense that something like this would exist. And yes, there is a skin of the original Candyland with Oompa Loompa game pieces and you travel around the chocolate factory. From what I've been able to gather, this edition is actually pretty recent, which Candyland Willy Wonka. I mean, come on, this is a match made in heaven. How come it took them like this long to make it? Like, were there marketing issues? Did they have trouble getting a hold of the Candyland IP? Like, what happened? It just confuses me that something like this took so long to make. Okay, so that was layer 4, some more obscure stuff, but then again, you can, like, find out about a lot of these if you look in some kind of, like, merchandise collection or a fun fact list. Let's start to get legitimately obscure with our facts, shall we? On to the place that keeps everyone's favorite river running, the control room. Total number of book editions. There are around 20 publications of the Charlie and Chocolate Factory book. There have been multiple illustrators for the book over the years too, and one of the biggest revisions of the book occurred in the 70s because of something we'll talk about later. Discontinued Wonka candies. During the now defunct years of the Wonka Candy Company's existence, there have been a large amount of candies produced under the Wonka name. Sadly, however, not all of them have lived to see the company's end. A total list of these discontinued candies include Chewy Runts, Dinosaur Eggs, Dweebs, Everlasting Hot Gobstoppers, Fizzy Jerks, Fruit Tart Chews, Fruit Marvels, Gummy Nerds, Oompas, Punkies, Rinky Dinks, Scrumdiddlyumptious Bars, Shock Tarts, Sour Gumballs, Super Scrunch, Tangy Bloops, Tangy Bumps, Tangy Bunnies, Tartan Tinies, Tinglers, Volcano Rocks, Wacky Wafers, Willy Wonka's Guppies, Willy Wonka's Squidge, Willy Wonka's Watermelon, Wonka Bar, Wonka Biscuits, Wonka Daredevils, Wonka Donuts, and Exploders. Oh my goodness. Funko Playmobil figure. Playmobil is a German toy company founded sometime in the 70s that focuses on making Lego-esque customizable character figures. What you're seeing on screen now is a Funko branded Willy Wonka Playmobil figure, and I think they also make Oompa Loompa ones too. Wonka Exceptionals. In the early 2010s, the Wonka brand produced Wonka Exceptionals, chocolate bars that were more fancy and decadent than the average Wonka product. Not only did they make fancy chocolate bars, they also made fruit-based candies. As for the chocolates, the Scrumdiddlyumptious chocolate bar was a milk chocolate bar that had bits of toffee in it, as well as cookies and peanuts. The chocolate waterfall bar has swirls of milk and white chocolate, and the dome chocolate bar is a dark chocolate bar with milk chocolate domes. Sugar jellies were little high-quality fruit gummies covered in sugar and came in a few flavors. The Fruit Marbles were hard fruit candies with juicy incenters. Sadly, however, all of these were discontinued in 2012. Squirrel Room. The original book and the 2005 film adaptation, there was a squirrel room where squirrels were aligned around the wall of a circular room. The squirrels would shell nuts, throwing the bad nuts in a garbage chute in the middle of the room. In the 1971 film, this was replaced with a room where they were golden geese. I mean, this was the 1970s, I highly doubt like 100 squirrels would have been possible back then. And CGI animation was practically non-existent, so... ServiceNow commercials. Founded in 2004, ServiceNow is a company specializing in digital workflows to make company production and management as a whole much easier and hassle-free. In mid-2021, they launched an ad campaign for digital workflows starring Willy Wonka himself, played by Dominic Marsh. The commercials were made by the BBDO San Francisco, with 9 commercials being made in total. Surprisingly enough, the commercials only took 4 months to make. Arthur Edelstein. Born in September 1922, Arthur Edelstein was a British cinematographer best known for his camera work for the 1971 Wonka film. He has also worked on 2 other major films, Whistle Down the Wind released in 1961 and The Runaway Children in 1970. He was actually nominated for a few awards, but he only won a single one. Best Cinematography for a series or special for his work on Little Lord Fauntleroy in 1980. Sadly though, he died in 1997 due to cancer. Mike TV was canonically the worst. In a couple of interviews, Wilder has stated that Paris Stemmet, the actor playing Mike TV, was actually the worst child on the set. Wilder has said that he was a little brat and that you were a troublemaker then. One example of him misbehaving was him letting out some of the wasps in the little hive thing on the meal gum machine. My goodness. Original 1970s chocolates. As part of the 1971 film's release, they were originally going to produce actual Wonka bars to sell in stores, but due to the fact that the bars would melt really quickly, they were pulled from shelves. Later in the mid-2000s, they produced actual Wonka bars, so we had to wait some 30 years to get them, but we got them. 2005 chocolate maker. Remember the 1971 chocolate mold making toy that we talked about a little bit ago? Turns out they actually made a chocolate maker for the 2005 movie. Of course, since this was 2005, it was a more advanced toy that used batteries. You actually put the chocolate chips in a mold, and then you put the mold in this like cooking apparatus that makes the molds for you, I guess. Again, I think the only reason people actually know about this thing's existence is because the Lucky Penny Shop actually did a video covering this one as well. And if you want the hard truth, for me it's honestly less exciting than the OG 1971 chocolate maker, since with the original you actually got to melt the chocolate and put it in the mold, and then put it in the fridge so you could eat it later. With this version, you just put it in this little stove thing and wait for it to cool. Kind of a downgrade if you ask me. Violet's makeup fiasco. Violet, as we all know, is the kid in the Willy Wonka story who is a gum-chewing fanatic, so much so that she let her addiction and ego get the better of her, and she tries a piece of Wonka's experimental gum despite Wonka's warnings. However, the makeup they used on her actor during the Blueberry segment got deeply ingrained into her pores. Because of this, one time during a math class, she started sweating, and it released the makeup, turning her whole face blue. The gum chewing also had real-life consequences, as it is reported that Violet's actress had gotten over 10 friggin' cavities in her teeth by the time filming was done. Yeah, I think those Oompa Loompas had a point when they sang their song about not being a gum chewer. National Film Registry. Founded in 1988, the National Film Registry is a collection of films that have been chosen to be archived and preserved for their cultural importance. In 2014, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was chosen to be archived in the Film Registry, along with Saving Private Ryan and The Big Lebowski in the same year in 2014. I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, but I think this serves as a testament just as how popular and well ingrained into our culture this movie actually is. Marshmallow pillows. These are confectionaries made by Wonka that are referred a couple of times throughout Wonka media, mostly in the book. As the name suggests, these are pillows that are actually edible. These were also referenced in one of the ServiceNow commercials where Wonka is sort of freaking out at how the supply of them is depleted. But his secretary uses the magic of digital workflows to solve the problem. Vermicious canids. Vermicious canids are aliens that are referenced throughout Willy Wonka media and are prominently featured in Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, where they invade the Space Hotel USA. They were also referenced by name in the 1971 film and are even referenced in the Roald Dahl novel James and the Giant Peach. They are described as the shadowy, egg-shaped beings that are carnivorous and hunt in packs, and they are known for their super speed and use their body to spell out the word scram before attacking. They were also featured in a couple of Flash games from the Wonka Company where they are green and have red eyes. Jersey Jack Pinball Machines. Jersey Jack Pinball was founded in 2011 by renowned amusement industrialist Jack Brunani. The company has made 3 models of Willy Wonka-themed pinball machines based around the 1971 film. The Standard Edition, Limited Edition, and Collector's Edition. The Standard Edition is the most basic, featuring pretty bare-bones ink artwork on it, and it's the least expensive, totaling at around $7,500. The Limited Edition, which costs $11,000, includes specialized ink decals on the sides and sparkly blue armor, as well as some additional gameplay features. By and large, the most special of these is, of course, the Collector's Edition. This beast of a pinball machine not only costed $17,500 at launch, but only 500 units were ever officially distributed. Another special thing about this version, it has speaker playback and lines recorded by Julie Dawn Cole herself, the original Veruca Salt, a fully dramatized reading audio. This is an audiobook released in 2004, stay with me, that was a CD recording of the original book as well as its sequel. It's a narration of the 2 books with a lot, and I mean a lot, of dialogue. I will be linking videos that have this audiobook in it into the description below. And that was Layer 5, some more obscure stuff that I think without this video would be somewhat harder to find. But how about we go deeper in the chocolatey reserves that even fewer people have seen. On to Layer 6. Oompa Loompa actors. Actors with dwarfism were cast from many parts of the world to play as the Oompa Loompas as seen in the 1971 film. There were 10 in total, 9 men and 1 woman. Specifically, the people who played them were Rudy Borgstaller, George Clayton, who played as Ginnaburk in a British adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Malcolm Dixon, who played Strutter in the 1981 film Time Bandits, Rusty Goff, who played a Jawa in Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, Ismet Hassan, Norman McGlenn, Angela Muscat, who played the butler in The Prisoner, Pepe Poppy, Marcus Powell, and Albert Wilkinson. OG Wonkatonia design. In the original book and 2005 film, the Wonkatonia was more like a Viking boat with a dragon design, and it was made out of pink hard candy. In the 1971 film, though, it has more of a typical fancy boat design. Slugworth's false teeth. In the original 1971 film, Wonka mentioned Slugworth having false teeth. It is unknown if Slugworth actually has dentures, or if Wonka was lying for the sake of insulting his rival, especially considering how Wilder straight up didn't want his portrayal of the character to be trusted. I don't know, maybe there's some hidden lore or reference somewhere that I just don't know about. Minus Land. I mentioned this a couple layers back. Minus Land is the weird dimension that Wonka and Charlie travel to in order to get Grandma Georgina's spirit and age her back into existence. Minus Land is sort of a limbo that was discovered by Wonka while he was experimenting with the Wonka Bite pills, and the area is populated by muleys, which are weird vampire-like monsters. Where the 2005 film kids are now. We talked about the 5 kids from the 1971 film and where they are now, so I think it's only fair we talk about the kids from the 2005 film. Charlie Bucket was played by Freddie Highmore, who has also played Dr. Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor, and he has also played Norman Bates from the Bates Motel series. Anna Sophia Robb played Violet Beauregard, and she has also been seen in films such as playing Leslie Burke in 2007's Bridge to Terabithia, which won her 2 Young Artist Awards, and as Carrie Bradshaw in The Carrie Diaries. Jordan Paul Fry played Mike TV, and he has also played Lewis Robinson in Meet the Robinsons. Philip Weiglatz played Augustus Gloop, however, he retired from acting in the early 2010s and he's now a software engineer at Zasso GmbH. Julie Winter played Veruca Salt, however, she has since given up acting as well, and is now studying to become a nurse. Boat Ride song Marilyn Manson cover. Your ears do not deceive you. Marilyn Manson did a cover of the Wondrous Boat Ride song from the 1971 film. His cover is called A Family Trip, and it is freaking whack and goofy, and I love it that way. The song is specifically his first track from his Portrait of an American Family album. Turns out Manson actually likes reciting the freaky boat ride poem before playing at concerts. And get this, he was originally going to be chosen for the role of Willy Wonka in the 2005 film. Oh, I can only imagine how that would have played out. Tom and Jerry crossover and the 1971 film Differences and Similarities. The Tom and Jerry crossover is pretty much an unfocused and messy version of the original 1971 film. As such, there are a bunch of similarities. The scenes and settings match those of the original movie, a lot of the songs are from the movie, a lot of lines are repeated verbatim, and Willy Wonka is his old, charming, sarcastic self. However, some changes were made, mostly in the character design. The candy store guy has now blonde hair for some reason, and Violet now has a small normal ponytail scrunchie instead of her ponytail having a giant Diglett nose thing. However, the most drastic character change has to be Willy Wonka himself. His design is mostly unchanged, however his hair is now sort of a brownish crimson color. It looks like the 2005 version's hair. Why they did this, I have no idea. Wonka's black goatee. Wonka's design in the original book was a little different than other popular adaptations. He of course had the top hat and purple coat, but he also had green trousers, white gloves, and a black pointed goatee. The color of his hair differs in appearances among book covers. The most popular is sort of a silverish gray, but on some covers he has been portrayed with black colored hair. Real life 2005 Golden Ticket Contest. To promote the release of the 2005 film, they held a sort of real life Golden Ticket Contest, where 5 golden tickets were hidden inside Wonka candy products. Information about the contest is kinda scarce, I mean this was over a decade ago. But from what I was able to find, those who were able to find the golden tickets were awarded $10,000 and a buttload of Wonka branded candy. There was also a second prize that came depending on a candy of choice. Wonka Donuts granted you a vacation to a European country of your choice, Sweet Tart Shockers granted you your own shopping spree, Nerds or Nerds Rope awarded you with being digitized at a Los Angeles video animation studio, Sparkle Jerry Cherry Laffy Taffy, god that's a mouthful, awarded you a trip to a fantasy sports camp. One of 100 first prize winnings, specifically a movie pack with a t-shirt, calendar, poster, video game, soundtrack, a special copy of the original book and board game, and a year's supply of Wonka candy. One strange thing is that despite my research, I haven't been able to find the 5 kids who actually won. This is Willy Wonka, you'd think they'd be famous, but the whole tour contract. Before the actual tour starts in the 1971 film, Wonka has everyone sign what can only be described as the longest safety contract in corporate history. Someone on Reddit actually tried to decompile most of this massive contract, and I shall read it to you right now. Whereas the management cannot be held responsible for any accidents, incidents, loss of property or life or limb, and whereas for damage caused by lightning, earthquakes, floods, fire, frost, or frippery of any sort, kind, or condition, consequently the undersigned take responsibility. Whereas during the term of this agreement you will become and remain at your sole cost and experience without request a member in good standing of any then property designated labor unions, guilds, or other organizations as defined and determined under the applicable law, pertaining persons performing services of the type and the character to be performed here and hereunder. Nothing herein contained shall be deemed to require the violation of any written agreement executed between us and any such labor union, guild, or other organization which may be in effect at the time of the execution of this agreement. And wherever there is any conflict between the proposition of this agreement and any other, the latter shall prevail. But in such an event, the provisions of this agreement so affected shall be circulated and limited only to the events necessary to permit confluence with such payment of any additional compensation. It shall be at the minimum that is permitted thereunder. Whereas to the extent that payment under hereunder exceeds applicable guild minimum, excess to the fullest, to extent permitted by any applicable agreement shall be credited by any against any additional payments that may have not been made to said guild agreement and shall be applied for any additional rights that can be required. Payment pursuant to said guild should be the provision of any labor or union, require the execution of any agreement for you. I am never reading this again, oh my god! Making the hat 2 inches shorter. Gene Wilder wanted to make some drastic changes to the original Willy Wonka costume. In some letters between Wilder and Mel Stewart, he outlined a few modifications he wanted to make. He wanted the purple jacket to have pockets to make it less feminine, and he didn't want tight lime green trousers, so he opted to having beige colored ones. He liked the hat but said he wanted to make it 2 inches shorter to make it more special. I think all of his ideas worked, cause his costume of Wonka's is by and large the most recognizable. Funko Dorbs. Yet another Funko toy line! This time Funko Dorbs, and of course the wordplay is just stellar here. This line features characters in the style of those weird round dolls that always stand upright. There are 2 Willy Wonka themed products in this line, specifically Wonka and an Oompa Loompa. And before anyone asks, no, this is sadly not the last of Funko that we'll be seeing on this iceberg. Miranda Mary Piker. This is just one of many unused/refurbished ideas of the original Willy Wonka book, specifically in older drafts. One of these was the character Miranda Mary Piker, later named Miranda Grope before being cut entirely, who Dahl described as the, quote, filthiest, rudest, and most disobedient creature you could imagine, end quote. She would become the victim to spotty powder, sugar that causes the consumer to get fake chickenpox, with Wonka making it so that kids would get out of school. Apparently this draft was lost for a pretty long time until it was found on Dahl's desk in the mid-2000s. Another early draft that never saw the light of day was the Vanilla Fudge Room, which wasn't published at the time due to the moral being too strict, whatever that means. At the point in the book when this draft was being written, Charlie had originally had his mom as his chaperone and there were 8 kids instead of 5. Even earlier drafts had 15. In this Vanilla Fudge Room, the kids tore a huge fudge mountain, with 2 of them riding wagons of fudge going into the pounding and cutting room, where a machine fits the fudge for consumption. Thankfully, the machine comes with a failsafe just in case any kids fall down. There is quite a few other unused things and scenarios, which you can check out over at the Roald Dahl archives. 2010 Opera. Commissioned by American Lyric Theater, The Golden Ticket is a 2010 opera based off of the original book. The opera had a very hard time getting off the ground, being passed out by multiple commissioners, one of which, Manchester Kamata, straight up deeming it a failure. A demo recording came to the attention of the producing artistic director for the American Lyric Theater, who finally greenlit the project. The Giraffe and Pelly and Me reference. The Giraffe and Pelly and Me is a book published by Roald Dahl in 1985. The book revolves around a kid who befriends a monkey, a pelican, and giraffe who all start a window cleaning service together. This book actually contains references to other Roald Dahl books, including Willy Wonka. This specifically comes into play when the kid repurposes an old abandoned building into a candy shop where he sells Wonka branded candies. Okay, so from the information I have presented here, I think it's safe to say we're getting into some real obscure stuff. But it's still information that any, big-time, legitimate Dahl or Wonka fan would know. How about we get more obscure? On to Layer 7. Grandpa Joe hate them. There is so much hate surrounding Grandpa Joe, I kid you not. There is a subreddit dedicated to hating this one character. It has over 100,000 members. And this hate isn't even unjustified either. When you look at how he was in the 1971 film, he was pretty much a colossal dingus. He stayed in bed all the time while his daughter works, while being paid peanuts, mind you. And he only got up when Charlie won the golden ticket and sang a song mostly about himself. And he says that someone else deserves a kick in the pants and that they're a nitwit even though he's just as big of a booger as Veruca and Violet. And he has the oh-so-bright idea to steal fizzy lifting drinks even though the other kids are seen stealing stuff and getting brutally punished for it. But no, he's gotta self-indulge like the idiot he is. Honestly though, you seriously should check out the subreddit. It is glorious. 2001 DVD. To celebrate the 30th anniversary for the 1971 film, they released the first ever DVD release of the 1971 film. If you grew up in the 2000s at all like me, then you can expect that the film has this sort of stylized navigation menu. Whenever you go to a certain part of what's on the CD, a cinematic of the viewer going through the Wonka video is shown. The main menu takes place in the chocolate room with Wonka and Charlie just doing their thing. The special features takes place by the side of the chocolate river through the eyes of an Oompa Loompa. The scene selection menu is situated inside of the Wonka vision room, and the language selection screen takes place in the fizzy lifting drink room. 40th anniversary DVD box set. While we're on the topic of DVDs, let's talk about the special DVD box set released in 2011 for the 1971 film's 40th anniversary. This box contains DVD and Blu-ray versions of the film, as well as the Pure Imagination book, an archival correspondence, whatever the heck that's supposed to be, a purple Wonka bar-inspired DVD case containing all 3 DVDs in the set, with the 3rd DVD being a special new-at-the-time interview with the film's director, and a totally rad pencil and eraser case complete with the original Wonka bar design. The Oompa Loompa steering the boat. The SS Wonkatonia was a prop that was being pulled along the chocolate river by cables. However, the Oompa Loompa steering the boat actually thought he was steering the boat. As Mel Stewart says in the behind-the-scenes book, I wanted him to think he was directing its course. Okay, so here we have the first of a small handful of potentially triggering entries on this iceberg, and it is racist Oompa Loompas. Oh boy. In early publications of the original book, Oompa Loompas were straight up, I'm not joking, black African pygmy people that Wonka smuggled from the jungles of Africa, and he, as we all know, paid them in cocoa beans. I really don't think I need to explain why this is so bad. Doll literally got in trouble with the NAACP because of this. And thankfully, these Oompa Loompas were revised in a 1973 revision of the book, being described as pale hippie pixies with long blonde hair and wearing loincloths. Obviously, this was after the movie, so for the movie, they were made into little orange munchkins with green hair. In the 2005 film, they were portrayed as little tribal dudes wearing work uniforms and weird poop buns in their hair. Laffy Taffy 3D Pyramid Challenge. This was a creepy exploration game where you traversed a maze with a monster stalking you throughout. And if the monster caught you, he drained some of your flashlight battery, and if your flashlight died, then it would pretty much result in a game over. A lot of kids from back in the day got scared of this game after playing it. I've played it myself, and yeah, it's not really hard to see why. Jelly Belly Golden Ticket Contest. In late 2020, the Jelly Belly Jelly Bean Company hosted their own Wonka-inspired contest when the founder, David Klein, directed to disown the factory, deciding to hold the contest to find an heir to his throne. In a video promoting the contest, he says, "We're going to have the ultimate treasure hunt where the winner will be receiving a key to one of our candy factories." Almost an entire year later, a guy from Colorado named Andrew Moss finally found the golden ticket, winning the keys to the factory. "Not till you're 12, son." This is a line said by Mike TV's dad during the scene where they're interviewing the TV household. The line itself apparently took, and I'm not joking, over 40 takes to get right. Like, this just boggles my mind. How did something as simple as saying this take like 40 some odd takes? Did Mr. TV's actor become camera shy or something? I don't... Roald Dahl's Splendiferous Showdown. To celebrate Roald Dahl's 100th birthday in 2016, a bus-guided tour was held across multiple areas of the US, bringing with them fun games and activities. Apparently, they only went to like 26 schools across the US and 3 art centers across only 24 cities, which is why documentation about this is kinda scarce. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Ride. The Alton Towers theme park in England had a dark ride based off of the original book. The ride opened in April of 2005 and closed in November of 2015. The attraction started with a boat ride through Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. After this, passengers would leave the boat and be seated to a pre-show video. Then after this, everyone would be able to ride the Great Glass Elevator through the rest of the factory. In 2019, a bunch of memorabilia from this ride was sold in an auction. Mad Libs book. Mad Libs is a game where you are given a sort of written story and you have to fill in the blanks of the story with words of your choice, usually labeled with what kind of word it's supposed to be, i.e. if it's supposed to be a noun or a verb. The game is often used as an educational device for teaching parts of sentences. In 2018, the official Mad Libs company published a Mad Libs book themed around the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book. That's a lot of books. Wonka's Golden Eggs. This is a YouTube animation made by Exploshi, an animation artist known for making surrealist comedy videos using a combination of 2D and 3D animation. Her animation, Wonka's Golden Eggs, is essentially a parody of the 2005 film, with bootleg versions of the 5 kids going into the factories with a series of unfortunate events happening to them. The video is weird and I love it. Primus and the Chocolate Factory with the fungi and symbol. This was an album released by Primus in October 21st, 2014. The album consists of remastered versions of the songs from the 1971 film. Lead singer and bassist Les Claypool was once obsessed with the 1971 film, which eventually led to the album's creation. Nicholas Anderton Franklin. This guy owns the largest ever collection of Willy Wonka memorabilia. His Wonka Wing has so much stuff, he's even popular amongst the cast and crew of both movies. Just a few of the things he owns include a couple of real and prop Wonka bars, one of the Dear People of the World posters from the 2005 movie, a candy cane from the Chocolate River from the set of the 2005 movie, and one of the last remaining Wonka bars from the 1971 movie given by Julie Dawn Cole herself, and so many more props. I would greatly recommend searching this guy up. He is incredible. Charlie Bucket's dad. Before I get into this entry, very minor warning for family member deaths. I know it's a trigger for a handful of people, so I'm just going to warn you guys now. One example of weird plot holes between the books and the 1971 film has to do with Charlie Bucket's dad. In the books and 2005 movie, Mr. Bucket works at a toothpaste factory screwing the caps on the toothpaste tubes. And that's literally it. However, Mr. Bucket is eventually let off his job, leaving the family even deeper into poverty. However, in the 1971 film, Charlie's dad is never shown, and some dialogue relieves that he just straight up died. How exactly he died and when is unknown. Why did this get added in the 1971 film? Were they not able to get an actor to play his dad or something? R-rated Willy Wonka. This is a video made by Corridor, part of their R-rated series. They use a bunch of editing and special effects, which look super sleek and blend in really well, by the way, to make a super gory and evil version of the original 1971 film, which represents Wonka as an evil mastermind offing his contestants using traps set up in the factory. Also, in this video, Charlie Bucket is super addicted to chocolate for some reason. I mean, he literally stabs a guy for a golden ticket, so... Also, I'm only showing the thumbnail in this video because, trust me, it's really, really disturbing. So if you're going to watch it at your own risk. Veruca's knee injury. During the scene where everyone is running around the chocolate room while Veruca is trying to break open a candy watermelon, you can see that her knee is bloody. That's because her actress actually cut her knee open on a rock that was on set, and she even has a scar on her knee that is still there to this day. Real-life edible wallpaper. In the 1971 film, after Violet's fiasco in the inventing room, the gang is taken through a hallway with lickable wallpaper for nurseries. Well, the actual lickable wallpaper they used wasn't actually edible. It is actually possible nowadays to make lickable wallpaper. In 2010, culinary genius Heston Blythma actually made edible wallpaper, but the recipes for his can get very complicated. In one London office building, some food connoisseurs covered the elevator walls with lickable wallpaper. I can only imagine how that went down. Wonka targeted Charlie specifically. Mel Stewart originally wanted to reveal a bit of extra lore at the end of the movie. Specifically, he wanted Wonka to reveal that he hid the golden tickets in such a way that Charlie would get the last one. While the idea was dropped, you can sort of infer this based on how they're interviewing the kids when they get their golden tickets. Slugworth is seen sort of quizzing them during their interview scenes. Grandpa George's visibility impairment. Ernst Ziegler not only played Grandpa George in the 1971 film, he was also a World War I veteran. However, he was nearly blinded during his years of service, so while filming they had him look at a red dot to instruct him on where to look. Okay, so of the triggering topics, this one is by and large the most important. And I'm warning you right now, it delves into some very triggering stuff. This topic specifically covers things like multiple types of abuse from parents. If that kind of stuff triggers you, please skip to the timestamp that I have on screen. Are you guys ready? Abusive parents in the 2005 film. Thanks to my research and Danny Bright on Reddit, I noticed something really sad in the 2005 film. A lot of parents that you see in the film are abusive in some way or another. The first offender in this category is Wonka's dad, part of Wonka's backstory that was only present in the 2005 film, nowhere else. Why they did this, I have no idea, but I digress. Back when Wonka was a child, his dad, Wilbur Wonka, was a very strict dentist. Oh, he didn't want his son getting cavities, so instead of putting emphasis on teaching young Wonka some healthy oral habits, he put a giant pair of obstructive braces on his son. Despite the dad having good intentions, the way he carried them out was far too extreme and hurtful on Wonka's end. I was originally just going to talk about Wonka's dad and nothing more, but again, big thanks to Danny Bright on Reddit who suggests I added these two. We all know Veruca is a brat, but apparently her mom has an especially hard time dealing with her, since in the 2005 film, it is shown that Veruca's mom is a straight-up alcoholic. In the 2005 film, she can be seen drinking martinis and such with her daughter's bratty behavior and instead piling it all on her husband. And yes, this can happen in the real world where a parent will use alcoholism and the depressant effects to try and numb some sort of pain being either directly or indirectly affected by either the child or any other sort of family member. Finally, we have what may be a bit of a stretch, but it can also be heavily inferred that the 2005 version of Violet's mom is abusive. In the 2005 film, Mrs. Beauregard is seen and implied off camera to be actually egging on her daughter's obnoxious sore winter antics. While it is important to recognize your child's victories in life and nurture a healthy sense of confidence and self-esteem, going to the extremes with it can lead to said child becoming an egotistical airhead with an unhealthy passion to win at everything. At the end of the movie, Mrs. Beauregard gets super ticked off at her daughter thanks to said daughter disobeying Wonka during the events inside the chocolate factory, to the point where she straight up humiliates her somewhat. Now, I do think that she had the right to talk down to her daughter here. She had been an egotistical brat, disobeyed what was supposed to be her older peer. However, humiliation should never, I repeat, never be a way to teach or lesson a child, no matter how important or big the lesson is. I know I don't have much to say in this, considering I'm not a parent, but again, it's really cruel hearing about all this. Abuse in any relationship is never okay, and it oftentimes goes unnoticed from everyone, including the victim themselves. It's something that is never easy to talk about, in my case especially, but it's something that needs to be addressed if things are going to get better. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please, I implore you to call the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. It's open 24/7, 365, and the people there are always willing to help. Whoo boy, that was a tad bit realistic there. That was a tad bit too realistic. Let's jump out of the real darkness and get into some far less triggering fantasy darkness. That's right, let's get even more obscure. Think you can handle the knowledge? On to layer 8. '50th Anniversary Book Cover. 2014 was the 50th anniversary of the original book. For the 50th anniversary, they made a special book cover. I don't even think I need to articulate why everything about this is wrong. It has nothing to do with the actual book. It's creepy. The kid in the photo is horrifying. As it turns out, the source image from this was from stupid 2008 fashion magazine. Oh my god. I think this goes without saying, but it caused a lot of controversy back in the day. Here's to hoping they make a better one for 2024. The 5th golden ticket winner in the photo. In the Willy Wonka story, especially in the 1971 movie, the 5th golden ticket winner was some guy from Paraguay. Later in the story, it's revealed that his 5th golden ticket was actually forged, and as we all know, Charlie Bucket won the actual golden ticket. In the 1971 film, we get to see a picture of the man's face, and the dude they used in the specific photo was named Martin Bormann. This guy was, and I'm not joking when I say this, Adolf Hitler's personal secretary. I am dead serious. However, after Hitler pretty much offed himself in 1945, multiple Nazis from the Third Reich were caught and convicted of war crimes. All of them but Bormann. The leading theory at the time was that he had escaped to South Africa since a lot of other Nazis had taken refuge there. As for his actual whereabouts, in 1972, several skeletal corpses were dug up in West Berlin, with one skeleton proving remarkably similar to Bormann's overall body shape. In 1998, thanks to the rise of genetic testing technology, the remains were proven to be Bormann's. Going back to the 1971 movie, the joke here is that a minor character from a lighthearted children's movie is literally a Nazi war criminal. Gobstopper Horror Trailer. This is a sort of parody horror trailer made by Funny or Die. The trailer follows some teens as they find a golden ticket inside of an old Wonka bar. They go to where the ticket tells them to, only to find it's some run-down factory, and they find the real Slugworth battered and bruised and bound by chains. And then we see a creepy old version of Wonka played by Christopher Lloyd of all actors. Oh, and the Oompa Loompas in this version are weird little dudes running around in prison outfits, and they eat a guy. Yay! It is revealed that Wonka sent out the golden ticket so he'd have some people to make candy out of. Yeah. This trailer was only made as a parody and an actual film has sadly never released. Dremeister Chocolate Factory Incident. In late 2018, the Dremeister Chocolate Factory located in Westerland, Germany had a little mishap. You know, just a small little technical defect, causing literally over a ton of melted chocolate to cover nearby streets. And then it took 25 firefighters to clean the mess up, a process that was made only even more difficult thanks to the chocolate hardening thanks to the cold temperatures. Toy Factory Plushes. Founded in 1999, Toy Factory LLC is a company that specializes in making various plush toys for various franchises, including Tom and Jerry, Where's Waldo, Whack-A-Mole, and importantly in this context, the 1971 Willy Wonka film. In this assortment there are 4 plushies. Wonka, Charlie Bucket holding his golden ticket, Violet has a blueberry, and an Oompa Loompa. Grauman's Chinese Theater. This is a theater located in Hollywood, California. The theater was built in January of 1926 and opened a little over a year later in May of 1927. This is important in the context of Willy Wonka because the very first ever public screening of the 2005 film took place at this theater, with a portion of the box office money being given to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The 2005 film would release in theaters on July 15th, and the exact same day the film would premiere in the United Kingdom. 1971 Captain Crunch ad. What you're saying on screen right now is a box of Captain Crunch from 1971. I think the biggest takeaway here is obviously the ad on the back advertising the chocolate making toy we mentioned like ages ago. Also advertises the movie with the bottom of the box having those blinking light billboards you see on the movie theater buildings. I think the most uncanny thing about all of this is the design for Wonka pictured on the box. This dude looks like Cave Johnson. Where's my Cafoofle Gene Wilder Willy Wonka? I mean, this was before the movie was released, but I mean, come on. They got everything else correct. Why couldn't they have just given the Wonka vectors like messy hair and the orange top hat? Like, what were you doing? Justin Trudeau controversy. Justin Trudeau is the current Prime Minister of Canada as of me recording this. In late 2021, there was an attack ad against him posted on Twitter where his face was plastered over the clip of Veruca Salt singing her "I Want It Now" song. This video was later pulled from Twitter due to Warner Brothers claiming use of the clip was copyright infringement. Aside from this, a lot of people commented on this video calling it stupid and having poor taste. Which, I mean, you're attacking someone with Willy Wonka, I mean, that is pretty stupid. 1975 football broadcast. On November 7th, 1975, specifically at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, NBC was going to air the 1971 Willy Wonka movie. However, the broadcast failed in a spectacular fashion, since this was being aired after a football match between the Washington Redskins and the Oakland Raiders. The game went into overtime, which meant that the first half hour of the film never actually aired that evening. Keep in mind that this was like only the second or so time the film had ever aired on television. And this was back before the days of stuff like VHSs and VCRs, so it rightfully caused a stir back in the day. Toys R Us Times Square shop. In late 2010, a Willy Wonka themed shop opened in the Toys R Us Times Square in New York. The shop sold all kinds of Wonka candy up to that point, including the Wonka Exceptionals we talked about earlier. The store also had a hat-sized display and the giant decoration tree that had fake pixie sticks and kazoozles hanging from it. Sadly, however, the entire Toys R Us Times Square shop closed at the end of 2015, taking the Wonka candy shop along with it. Operation Golden Ticket Theft Ring. In August of 2018, William Wadgerez and 2 other criminals were charged with multiple accounts of breaking into and stealing from ATMs as well as car hijacking. At the time, 2 others who made up Rodriguez's ring of thieves were considered at large, but were found and apprehended a few days later. William Rodriguez often went by the nickname of Willy Wonka, and the entire heist done by him and his 4 goons went by the name of Operation Golden Ticket, which expanded across multiple areas of the United States. Rodriguez was held on a $500,000 bail after stealing $300,000 worth of cash from ATMs as well as a couple of other crimes, which include, and I quote, conspiracy, assault with a dangerous weapon, breaking and entering, receiving a stolen vehicle, and possession of burglarious instruments. Willy Wonka beta tape. This is a creepypasta about an old cartoon draft of the original Roald Dahl book. The creepypasta revolves around the protagonist contacting someone who was once an acquaintance with a doll, specifically in question about whether or not the Willy Wonka story had some kind of deeper meaning to it. The acquaintance gives him an old tape that had an old cross-hatch-styled cartoon that was essentially an original draft for the book. The typical Lost episode creepypasta hijinks ensue with some pretty disturbing details thrown in, along with using some actual old and cut content from the book. I may or may not narrate this story sometime when I feel like it, and don't count on it. Beheaded chicken in the tunnel scene. In the freaky tunnel ride, you can see a good share of disturbing imagery. Such wonderful things you can witness include a centipede crawling all over Wallen Green's face, a chameleon eating an insect of some sort, and a chicken being decapitated with an axe. How was this a kid's film? I mean, I get it, this was the 70s, censorship was different back then, but still. Speaking of which, this was the 70s, I kinda doubt stuff like stock footage archives existed back then, so I can only assume that some unfortunate, hopefully already dead, chicken got his head axed off. Yay. Rusty Goff 2005 interview. As mentioned previously, Rusty Goff was one of the miniature persons playing one of the 10 Oompa Loompas in the 1971 film. In 2005, he was interviewed in an article for The Guardian. In said article, he talked about his experiences working with the cast and crew and his recollections of miniature people in movies back then. Steiff Willy Wonka Teddy Bear. Richard Steiff invented his classic teddy bear company in the early 1900s, and has since been making classic high-quality stuffed bears. In 2016, to celebrate Roald Dahl's 100th birthday, the company released a limited edition Willy Wonka teddy bear. This thing looks super sleek, but sadly you can't buy it from the Steiff website anymore, and if you try and find online listings for one, expect to fork over a good amount of cash. Wonka Company blogspot site. If you do enough digging, you can actually find the old Wonka blogspot blog that was maintained during the late 2000s and early 2010s. It was used as a sort of news outlet for the company where they discussed things like some musical road trip tours that we will be covering here, and some other things. Hypixel Skyblock cameo. Skyblock is a minigame and part of the renowned Minecraft server Hypixel. In the park area, you can find an NPC known as Melody, who will teach the player to play songs on a harp in exchange for various goodies. One of the songs she will teach the player is Godly Imagination, a nod to Pure Imagination from the 1971 film. Z104 phone scams McDonald's prank call. Z104 Z Morning Zoo is a satire radio channel that hosts prank call segments on Fridays. One of these segments was them prank calling some guy who worked at McDonald's, telling them that they were suing him for forging McDonald's Monopoly game board pieces. When they redirected him to speak with a lawyer about the fake case, instead of an actual person playing the lawyer, they straight up used clips of Willy Wonka's "You lose!" rant. I think the funniest part of this entire call is the fact that the guy doesn't even recognize it's Willy Wonka. Holes in the mushroom umbrella. If you pay real close attention to the scene in the Pure Imagination song where Wonka picks up a green mushroom cap and uses it as an umbrella, you can see that the bottom of the green mushroom has a bunch of holes in it from past takes of Wilder stabbing the bottom of it with his cane. Videopia UK. Videopia is a UK-based club of sorts that tours the United Kingdom and lets people make their own sort of low-budget forms of classic films. One of these is, of course, the 1971 version of Willy Wonka. From what I described earlier, their version of the film plays out like you'd expect. A lot of the actors are barely in costume except for whoever's playing Wonka. It's an actual Wonka costume, and I think one kid has like weird mad scientist hair and he's playing Grandpa Joe. It's really weird. A lot of cardboard props are also used, and the entire filming is taking place at Camp Festival, a British music festival located in the country of Dorset in southwest England. I don't even know where the chocolate room is supposed to be there. I'm assuming it's somewhere around or in the festival, and the kids are literally picking up giant plush candies and nibbling on hula hoops, and the chocolate river is just a normal river filled with muddy water. I'll link a video of it in the description so you know what I'm talking about, but I'm warning you right now, it's really wiggity whack. Prodnose and Ficklegerber. Prodnose and Ficklegerber are two characters mentioned in the original book who, like Slugworth, were Wonka's rivals in the candy confectionery business. Also like Slugworth, the two hired spies to work in Wonka's factory so they could steal his secret recipes. Willy Wonka on Laserdisc. Laserdisc was a disc-based home media format from the late 70s and early 80s that served as sort of a precursor to modern-day DVDs. Despite it being pretty much a big and more primitive version of the DVD, and the fact that it paved the way for disc-based storage systems in general, it never sold well in a lot of countries aside from Japan. A lot of home media, including films and video games, were released on Laserdisc. Of course, the one we're going to be talking about here is the 1971 Wonka film. The Laserdisc release of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was released in 1991, and there are 25th anniversary editions akin to the 20th anniversary VHS and DVD releases. There is one 20th anniversary branded Laserdisc on eBay that has signatures from some of the cast members on the cover, which goes for almost $2,000. Colorado lottery tickets. During 2017, the Colorado Lottery released a line of lottery tickets with a Willy Wonka aesthetic, with them being available starting in May of 2017 and ending in October of the same year, with the drawing date being the following day. The grand prize was 2 top winnings of $250,000, with other tiers offering less money but being more common. Okay, now we're getting into some super obscure stuff. Some stuff that I even doubt the more dedicated fans would actually know about. And here we go on to layer 9. This dark chocolate isn't made of your average, normal, everyday darkness. This chocolate is made of advanced darkness. Golden Wonka and Charlie Funko Pops. So apparently there exist 2 special, super rare golden versions of the Oompa Loompa and Wonka Funko Pops, made sometime during 2016 or 2017. From the information that I could find, only 10 sets of these were ever made, and listings of these things online can go for over tens of thousands of dollars. Speaking of which, I couldn't legitimately find any actual listings of these things that were in stock, so yeah, I think that's kinda telling, isn't it? June 2016 factory spill. In June of 2016, a Wonka candy factory situated in Chicago had to be evacuated due to a lithium chloride pipe bursting. The solution found its way into the ventilation system of the building, with multiple workers complaining of nausea and troubles breathing. Said employees were taken to the hospital afterwards. Thankfully, none of the workers' illnesses were ever life-threatening, and work was able to resume a couple hours later. Quaker cereal newspaper ad. What you're seeing on screen is a super old ad for the 1971 film, with an illustration of some of the things that, as seen in the film, as well as the comic book styled synopsis. It also advertises the chocolate making kit. One weird thing about this ad is the colors they used for Wonka's. His hat is weirdly purple and his hair has a lot more red in it. King Vitaman. King Vitaman was a brand of cereal distributed by Quaker starting in the late 60s. As the name implied, the cereal was a lot healthier than other breakfast cereals, with half the sugar content and lots of vitamins and iron. In old TV ads, they had the titular King Vitaman, voiced by Joe Flynn and later by George Mann, dueling with the Blue Baron. This cereal was in circulation for many years, only ending in 2019. The reason why this is on the iceberg to begin with is because King Vitaman, along with a few other cereal mascots, were featured as molds in the Chocolate Maker toy. This is the nth time we've referenced it by now. Cancelled 2005 film Broadway adaptation. Super early into the 2005 film's production, Warner Brothers wanted to make a tie-in stage musical. However, a few years later into development, the idea was cancelled. To my knowledge, this is like the only information about this cancelled stage musical that has ever surfaced to the public, which is honestly kinda sad because I really would have liked to see how the 2005 film could have been transitioned onto stage. Tom Brady Money. This hurts. This hurts. I'm not even a football fan, and looking at this, it hurts. This really hurts. Man, this is making me wish Tom Brady never filed out of retirement. Would Willy Wonka be a good compliance officer? This is a 2016 article written by Sean Fredlin for Corporate Compliance Insights. In this article, he discusses whether or not Willy Wonka would make a good compliance officer, drawing parallels between the kids in the factory to employees and the Oompa Loompas as a compliance and ethics team. I'll link the full article in the description. It's a pretty interesting read, but at the same time, this comes with the sort of funny, ironic territory of Willy Wonka being in some serious, sophisticated business ordeal, sort of like the Wonka Exceptionals. Texas Lottery controversy. In the late 2010s, the Texas Lottery released a line of lottery tickets based around the 1971 Wonka film. The grand prize was going to be the biggest in lottery history. $1 billion! However, time passed and no one ever won the lottery. Why? Well, apparently the whole thing was a big fat sham. First, you need a losing ticket in order to actually get in the second chance winnings. The registration number was hidden behind a little scratch-off thing on the tickets, and the announcements of the first branch of winners were given out in a really bad and cryptic way. It's all one giant tangled web of mistakes. I'll be citing a Dallas Morning News article that explains the whole thing because honestly, I don't think my words can do it justice. 1971 film, VHS, DVD, and TV promos. There have been a lot of old promos for the many releases of the 1971 film, from TV broadcasts to physical media releases. I'll play clips of a few of them now.
From the pen of author Roald Dahl to the motion picture screen comes a most unusual chocolate factory and the mysterious candy man inside.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day.
Gene Wilder is the mythical candy man, Willy Wonka, and he's opening his factory gates for 5 lucky children who find a golden ticket. Our hero, Charlie Bucket, wants his golden chance more than anyone.
Open it, Charlie. Let's see that golden ticket.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? It's not fair to raise his hope.
Never mind. Go on, open it, Charlie. I want to see that gold.
Stop it, Dad.
I've got the same chance as anybody else, haven't I?
Eat your way through the chocolate room.
Did you hear the news? There's one golden ticket still floating around somewhere.
A long time ago,
I think I'll buy just one more.
the dreams and wishes of one young boy were turned to gold.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities. And some of my realities become dreams.
Into the land of the everlasting Gulf Stuffer.
Lickable wallpaper.
See Wilder stars in the chocolate-covered family classic
Having fun?
that you can sink your teeth into.
You're going to love this.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Saturday.
Oompa Loompa City. In the book, while Charlie, Grandpa Joe, Mike, and his parents and Wonka are riding through the Great Glass Elevator, Charlie sees many things go by. One of them is a miniature city for the Oompa Loompas, with everything in it proportional to their small size. As far as I can tell, the original book is the only time where this miniature city appears, which is kind of a shame because I would have loved to see what this city could have actually looked like in, like, the movies or something. Wonkamobile used fire extinguisher foam. The Wonkamobile is a vehicle built by Willy Wonka seen in the 1971 film. The vehicle is powered by soda carbonation bubbles, which go flying everywhere while the remaining contestants are riding on it. Well, in universe it was carbonation bubbles. The actual material they used for the Wonkamobile was fire extinguisher foam. And since the substance is a potent skin irritant, the actors that got exposed had to be taken to the hospital for a few days to get treatment. PPW Toys Nestler Dolls. This is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. An officially licensed set of plastic Nestler dolls based off of the characters from the 1971 Wonka film. As for PPW Toys, all I could find on them is that they make a bunch of Mr. Potato Head parody toys, so that's cool. 2009 Bamboozle Left Roadshow. The Bamboozle Left was a short-lived music festival that was active during the late 2000s. The Wonka Company helped sponsor the 2009 Bamboozle Left Roadshow, sponsoring the bands Never Shout Never, Mercury Mercedes, the CAB, Forever the Sickest Kids, and We the Kings. During the event, there were 200 special printed Wonka Gold cards, which if you were lucky enough to get one of these, you could actually go inside the candy manufacturing facility. There was also an auction held at one point where if you won, you could go up on front of the stage. This entire thing is kind of a rabbit hole in and of itself, and a pretty nice blast from the past too. And all of it is documented on the old Wonka Company Blogspot website. I won't be linking it for reasons, but I do have the entire website pretty much archived, so I will be doing a video on that soon. 1995 Nerds Valentine's Day cards. What you're seeing on screen now is a Valentine's Day card promoting some cherry and punch flavored nerds, dated 1995. It is copyrighted by Sunmark, who was instrumental in producing some of the classic then Wonka branded candies. Given by what Wonka is saying on the card, I can only assume that this was like sold in stores for students to pass out during Valentine's Day or something. I have no idea. Downloadable Flash games. The Wonka Candy Company was producing games from way back in the early 2000s. Due to the simplicity of Flash and Shockwave games back during these times, the games were very simple and would probably have at least some issue running online on older computers. Thankfully, some of the games allowed you to download them onto your computer, so you could play them offline. A lot of these games have been preserved and archived on archive.org, so I will be listing some of these. Spooky Nerds, Wonka's Inventinator Game, Pet Wonka Night, Laffy Taffy Tris, Laffy Taffy 3D Pyramid, Nerds Wrote Follow the Leader Game, Sweethearts 3D, and the Wonka Wild Coaster Game. Wonka-themed vending machines. In 2009, Nestle founded iVending, which provided service kiosks and program vending. I have no idea what that means either. In 2013, they released a vending machine for Wonka candy products. The vending machine had 8 tubes of Wonka candies that you could put in a little disposable cup, and a 42-inch interactive screen that guided you through everything. Payment methods included cash, gift cards, and credit cards. I couldn't find any information about these getting discontinued, so I can only imagine it was around like 2015 or something when the Wonka Candy Company itself got axed. Alternate Press Tour 2010. Alternative Press Magazine is a magazine that covers things mostly related to alternate rock bands. It has endorsed in rock band tours, labeled the AP Tour. In 2010, they had Never Shout Never tour across 41 cities across the United States. The Wonka Candy Company helped sponsor the tour by handing out free candy samples to those attending the concerts. Actual depth of the garbage chute. This is something that was brought up in a video by Lumency, specifically when he talked about Veruca being thrown down the garbage chute. Specifically, he talks about just how deep it is, using the drone of the echo of Veruca's voice, which lasts for a suspiciously long time. He estimates that based on how long the reverb lasts, the garbage chute is at least 4 or 5 stories, which, considering how massive Wonka's factory is, a chute of that size is too out of the question. I recommend watching Lumency's video if you want to find out more. Lost hiker scene. A deleted scene from the 1971 movie had a hiker on a mountain asking a guru, what is the meaning of life? Instead of answering the question in earnest, he just straight up asks the hiker for a Wonka bar, which he gives him. When the guru opens it and finds no golden ticket inside, he discards it. When the hiker asks his question again, the guru, obviously ticked off at the fact that he hadn't won a golden ticket, says, life is a disappointment. This scene was due to it being too depressing, especially the whole life is a disappointment line. Mel Stewart actually had a psychologist friend at the time, and when he contacted him about this scene, he said that, you don't understand, Mel. For many people, life is a disappointment. Anyway, scripts, original and reprinted, of this scene have been found, but the scene itself is still widely considered lost, not being able to be viewed by the general public. I hate to be the guy to rain on everyone's parades here, but I highly doubt this is going to be found in the near future, if at all. I mean, come on, this is the deleted depressing scene from a happy whimsical children's movie from the early 70s. It's literally been over 50 years by this point, and the scene itself has never seen the light of day. So I very seriously doubt the scene is going to be just showing up anytime soon. Here we are! After so long, we have arrived at our final destination, an area so deep in the factory that even Wonka himself has forgotten about it, where we get to see the most obscure and dark Willy Wonka facts out there. There is stuff in this layer that I doubt even the most hardcore fans will even know about. Let's go on to the final layer. (1985) video game. Okay, so Willy Wonka's trek into video games isn't quite over yet. In 1985, Soft Option produced a ZX Spectrum video game for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The game itself is comprised of 4 mini-games and an extra 5th game, all coincided with the 5 lucky kids from the book. Augustus's game is him trying to traverse a maze, Violet's game is her trying to dodge blueberries, Veruca's game involves her trying to fend off squirrels from the squirrel room, Mike's game is him trying to collect Wonka bars while avoiding shrink rays, and Charlie's game involves him traversing the entire chocolate factory trying to find 5 golden keys to the glass Wonkavator. As far as what a ZX Spectrum is, it was a personal microcomputer developed by Sinclair Research, being released in the UK in April of 1982. It was one of the most successful microcomputers in the region, however it started to decline in the 90s with the presence of other more powerful machines like the Commodore 64. Charlie and the White House. According to an old article on the Daily Telegraph's website, it turns out there was actually going to be a 3rd Willy Wonka book in the original lineup of the Charlie Bucket-centered Roald Dahl books. This book was apparently going to be titled Charlie in the White House, and it was going to be published in 1978. This story was going to pick up exactly where Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator left off. From what I understand, there are written and typed drafts for Charlie in the White House somewhere out there, but they aren't widely accessible to the public. The only way to view them, to my knowledge, is by physically going to the Roald Dahl Museum and Story Center, where a rough draft of the first chapter is archived. I personally would have really loved to see what exactly this book could have been. If the previous two adventures are as fantastic and mystical as they are, it really intrigues me to see what a third book could have in store. Madeline Stewart's role in the film. Remember Mel Stewart's daughter who we talked about, like, ages ago? Well, it turns out that, despite her pretty much being the only reason as to why the 1971 movie exists, she was only given a minor role in the film, specifically being a student in Mr. Turkentine's math class, and from what I can recall, she only spoke like 1 or 2 sentences of dialogue, and initially she wasn't even given any legitimate credit for her role. I found it so ironic that a person responsible for a movie's existence has only a very minor acting role in said movie, and for them to go uncredited no less. Left Brain Games. Left Brain Games is a private video game production company that has been in the business for at least a decade now. As it turns out, these were the guys who developed a lot of, if not all, the old Wonka Flash games from back in the day. Some of the other companies they have also developed for are EA, PBS Kids, and Pokemon. Five Nights at Wonka's. I know this sounds like a joke entry, but just bear with me. While I was doing research for this iceberg, I just randomly thought about whether or not someone ever made a Willy Wonka themed Five Nights at Freddy's fan game. So I went on the game drill and typed Willy Wonka into the search box, and as it turns out, someone actually did make a Five Nights at Wonka's game. I'm just going to put some gameplay up since it's all the context you'll need. Wonkazoid. In November of 2006, the Wonka Candy Company invested in what might be their most whack marketing campaign ever. They launched Wonkazoid, which were tiny little video game consoles that came with some decoration stickers and a pack of Wonka candy. Think about the little LCD Sonic games that McDonald's released from time to time back in the day, but this time it's with the Wonka Candy branding. There were 4 major models released: Shockball Showdown, Oopa Candy Flip, Nerds Hockey, and Freeze Tag, and these sold in retail stores all across the US for anywhere between $5 to $8. Sweat Kids TV Video. Sweat Kids TV is a YouTube channel that combines exercise with kids' fads in the most inexplicably whack way possible. In October of 2020, they made a Willy Wonka video, and it's honestly, it's something I don't want to talk about. And speaking of things that I don't want to talk about, Atlantis Squarepantsus. Sorry to remind you guys that this SpongeBob episode exists. Yeah, if you have heard about this episode at all, you've heard about how it's a bad Willy Wonka clone. If you somehow haven't heard of this infamous episode by now, basically SpongeBob and Patrick come across the half of this ancient medallion, whose other half is housed at a museum. The medallion grants them, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Squidward, and unknowingly Plankton, access to the mystical lost city of Atlantis. While visiting, they come across rooms that each pertain to the character's biggest desires, like Squidward literally getting lost in art in a Super Mario 64-styled art gallery, and Sandy losing herself in the VR tech in an uninspired laboratory. Trust me when I say that this episode is just an underwhelming mess, honestly. Like, I don't genuinely hate this episode like a lot of other people, but I will agree with everyone when I say that it left a lot to be desired. And if you couldn't tell by the rooms that pertain to each character's biggest desires, along with the really forced musical numbers, all of which are bad, except Plankton's song, he was like the only unironically enjoyable part of that whole special. This is, coincidentally or not, a bad Willy Wonka ripoff. As I said, I don't have a genuine grudge against this episode. At worst, it's just a really disappointing yet harmless episode. At least it doesn't treat poor mental health as comedy material. spookypyramid.htm. Here is another Wonka creepypasta, this time focusing on a haunted evil version of the 3D Pyramid Challenge. This evil version has the protagonist playing as the monster from the game, who gets torn apart by some kids, and apparently a spoopy version of Wonka comes out of the game and haunts the protagonist in real life. Yes, this creepypasta sounds as whack and almost cliched as I'm making it out to be. Old website wallpapers and screensavers. Going onto the old Wonka Company website via the Wayback Machine and doing some searching around, you can come across some old wallpapers that you can download. Obviously, these were from the late 90s and early 2000s, so they were fitted for computer monitors back then, which were pretty small. They had these normal sets of wallpapers and these small image tiles that would repeat across your screen to make a larger wallpaper. The site also had a screensaver that showcased Wonka touring his factory in the Wonkamobile. Sadly, I can only showcase a small amount of these since all of the wallpapers and the screensaver came in like these weird, primitive, self-extracting, executable files, which don't run on modern hardware, and I have not been able to get a DOS-box emulated Windows 95 running on my laptop, so sadly, these small previews will have to do for now. Club W newsletter. If you use the Wayback Machine again to go onto much older sections of the Wonka website, you notice there's a thing called Club W or Club Wonka. This was like a newsletter subscription thing of sorts, with all kinds of perks you could get if you joined, which included entry into specific contests and sweepstakes, birthday wishes from the company, and other stuff. Apparently it was rebranded to My Club Dub when the website got a facelift in the late 2000s. I have no idea, there's very little information about this thing, like anywhere, so... 2010 Around the World Sweepstakes. In mid to late 2010, the Wonka Candy Company held a sweepstakes event where participants could enter either by mail or by purchasing Wonka-branded sweets. And the lucky first-place winners could win one of 5 trips around the world and $40,000 in cash, or from a list of other prizes. There was also a second chance drawing, though you could only enter this through email. And of course, there is little information on exactly who won. I'm sensing a trope here. Broward County Mall incident. In 2009, comedian Donnie Davis was arrested at the Broward County Mall in Florida because he was dressed as an Oompa Loompa while running around the mall, sponsoring his then upcoming comedy show, without legal consent, mind you. I cannot believe I just said all that out loud. And honestly, it makes me really miss Donnie Davis, since apparently he died recently, in early 2022 if I believe. May he rest in peace. Wonka School. This was an educational section of the old Willy Wonka website, where the kiddos could go and learn about random subjects including science and American history. Wonka's factory is actually a gas house. One depressing fact about the 1971 film, specifically where filming took place, has to do with Wonka's factory. The buildings you see in the complex for the factory were actually part of a gasworks facility, run by the Stadtwerke Mulchen Company. Can I just say how honestly depressing it is that such a magical place from a children's movie is actually just this gasworks facility, which, mind you, contributes to air pollution? I don't know, but it's just a fact that genuinely kind of bothers me. Willy Wonka and semiotics. Semiotics is a study of how symbols can be interpreted for what exactly they mean. What does this have to do with Willy Wonka? Well, the American Studies of the University of Virginia website has this one giant subsection where it talks about how the 1971 film uses its visuals to convey a story to the audience as well as other subjects. One example is the design of Wonka himself, as how his colorful design conveys a sophisticated yet whimsical and charming character. And this is only a third of the part of this website that I'm talking about. The entire section is dedicated to tying the 1971 film to this theory of the leisure class, written by Thorstein Veblen in 1898. Another section of the website goes into how this film can act as a sort of case study for the aforementioned theory. And the final third is a small look into how the film is a representation of the fantastical desires present within children's brains. I say small because sadly this section of the website was never finished. It's a very sophisticated and deep dive, one that I honestly do not have the time or competence to fully dive into here, so if you are genuinely curious, I greatly recommend reading into the actual website, which I have linked in the description. A lot of post-early 2000s Wonka.com media can never be recovered. Remember Flash Player? Yeah, now remember the fact that they shut down Flash Player in 2020 or so, meaning that a lot of Flash-based media got pretty much yeeted out of existence. Sadly, however, this means that a lot of stuff from the Wonka Company website sadly can never be recovered, since a lot of the site from the early 2000s onward is pretty much gone and dead because it relied so much on Flash, and you can't even view it even if you use the Wayback Machine. So yeah, sadly this means that a lot of the stuff from the old Wonka website can never be experienced again. Speaking of old websites, 2005 film promotional website. They made a website back in the day to promote the 2005 film. On the website you could download stuff like wallpapers and a screensaver, there was a photo gallery you could view, and some character profiles as well. And I have to get all this information from a video on the Web Design Museum since the entire site ran off a flash, and yeah. And credit goes to the Web Design Museum for the information. They have a video covering the website. I will be linking it down in the description below. Wonka.com.tripod.com. This is a really old fan website dedicated to pretty much all things Wonka, though it mostly revolves around the 1971 film. With the site's tagline being, another homepage dedicated to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And yes, they butchered Wonka's first name for some reason. The site has a couple of cool little odds and ends, such as some quotes from the movie, some song lyrics, and a straight up the full entire frickin' script for the movie. Also, this website is old. Judging by the little news thing they have on their front page, this website literally hasn't been updated in well over a decade. Since parts of it reads, and I quote, with the brilliant film director Tim Burton behind the project, it is destined to be a modern-day classic. Yeah, they're referring to the 2005 film here. And even then, this is before 2005 since this was early on in the film's production, especially since it states that it is unknown who is going to play the part of Wonka. Also, there's the link to a forum which requires you to log in for some reason. And there's one final thing about this website I want to talk about, which leads into my next entry. MikeTV.com and WonkaShop.com. On the links page for the Wonka.com website, there is a link to what is described as the official website for the guy who played Mike TV in the movie. All types of great autographed and movie memorabilia. However, when you click the link, it leads to a pretty much dead husk of a website. So I think it's safe to say that this Mike TV website is pretty much gone forever. Or is it? Through a little bit of web surfing, you can find another website called WonkaShop.com that houses a bunch of autographed stuff from the 1971 film. All types of great autographed movie memorabilia. Also, at the top of the Wonka Shop website, there's a little video with Mike TV on it. Is it possible that this Wonka Shop website is related to the old MikeTV.com that now links to pretty much nothing? What did the original Mike TV website look like? Pet Wonka Night. This is one of the old Shockwave games from the old days of the Wonka website. In this specific game, you take care of this weird pink Wonka-Night creature as it goes from good to bad to ugly. There are quite a few ways you can take care of him, feeding him, making him wear Wonka's hat for some reason, and playing mini-games with him. Once your pet grows up, it is ready to grow into the Wonka-branded candies, which is honestly kind of sad. Don't expect to become attached to this thing anyway, since an average playthrough of this game only lasts around 10 minutes. The reason why I put this specific game at the very bottom of the iceberg is because of the titular Wonka Night. Like, what is this thing even supposed to be? Like, how did Wonka even get a hold of this thing? I can only imagine he made it, since there's no evidence pointing to, oh, he just found it like he did the Oompa Loompas. If Wonka made this, then why are we taking care of it? Why can't he just, like, put a substitute for it in his candies? Why can't he just use its essence in his candies, instead of just making it? What, does its sentience make the candies better or something? And since this is a living being that is being put into food, does this mean that all of Wonka's candy is non-vegan friendly? Seriously, there is absolutely no information about this Wonka Night character anywhere else besides this one game. It's never mentioned in any of the films, stage plays, or books from what I can recall, so does it not have any purpose besides just being a minor character in a long-forgotten branch of Wonka lore? I don't know, it's something that's so weird and mysterious to the point where it just sort of belongs at the bottom of the iceberg. Jet Clipper Climax Plane Crash. In one part of the 1971 film, you can see an airplane dropping a supply of Wonka bars. As it turns out, the plane you see is specifically a Boeing 707, specifically named Jet Clipper Climax. Sadly, in 1974, just a few years after the release of the film, the plane experienced a devastating end when it crashed in Bali, Indonesia, killing 107 passengers. Mark Sweet as Willy Wonka. There exists a handful of Willy Wonka YouTube videos that are old ad campaigns for the Wonka Candy Company, some of the oldest out there. There is a specific actor playing Wonka here, Mark Sweet. Sweet is a Michigan-born comedian and magician who in the early 70s was hooked up by a friend to be a mascot of sorts for the Wonka Candy Company, playing Wonka himself. He would later be featured as the character in many print and television ads. There was even a television show he hosted called Willy Wonka's Fun Factory. This television show featured Mark Sweet as Willy Wonka and two puppet characters named Nell the Nerd and Timmy Tart and Tiny. This show was kind of like Sesame Street, where it featured the three interacting with guests, one of which was Smokey Bear, and the kids watching the show. The series consisted of around 76 half-hour episodes, but as far as I can tell, the one clip of Willy Wonka's Fun Factory on Mark Sweet's YouTube channel is the only publicly surviving clip of the entire series. Sweet actually worked on the company for 23 years before ending his partnership sometime in the early 90s. The unpredictable Wonkanizer. Remember the old Club W subscription thing we talked about a few entries back? Well, as it turns out, one of the specific perks you could get from being signed onto it was access to a specific game known as the Unpredictable Wonkanizer. And that's literally all of the information I can give you. The only shred of evidence that this thing ever existed is in the form of the old Wonka website on the Club W login screen. What this Unpredictable Wonkanizer game could have been is entirely a mystery. I personally think it was like a primitive version of those comic creator games, like what Arthur and SpongeBob had. But then again, that's just pure speculation. And let's be real here, this was an old Shockwave game from the late 90s that you could only access through this stupid online subscription service. So unfortunately, this game very likely isn't going to be showing up anytime soon, if at all. 2011 Golden Sound Storybook. You guys are going to have to bear with me on this one because this is something I found over on the Roald Dahl fandom wiki that I randomly came across just out of the blue. The specific page I'm talking about discusses a Golden Sound story rendition of the 1971 film released in 2011. For the uninitiated, the Golden Sound storybooks were those books that had the panel on the side with buttons that played sounds when you pressed them. However, I could not find a shred of evidence that pointed to the Willy Wonka Sounds book ever existing at all. So I very seriously doubt this thing exists. I mean, if you really need any evidence that this isn't real, it says one of the buttons is the chocolate room and it plays Pure Imagination, and the page itself cites the song as the high-pixel version we mentioned earlier, so yeah, this is very obviously fake. Nestle Candy Shop website. The short-lived Nestle Candy Shop actually had its own website, and even funnier is that it has been archived on the Wayback Machine. Literally, its only purpose is to advertise all of the candies that were owned under the Candy Shop brand at the time. Roald Dahl hated the 1971 film. If you've done enough research or know enough about the 1971 film, then this is a fact you probably already know by now. Basically, despite the fact that Roald Dahl was the screenplay writer for the 1971 film, he didn't have much control outside of that one position. There are many parts of the movie that he hated. The songs, the casting of Gene Wilder to play the titular Wonka, and a bunch of other creative differences. He hated it so much to the point where he straight up disowned the film, calling the music in it saccharine, sappy, and sentimental. I can't help but find this really sad and ironic. Wonka's true canon design. This is a speculative question I've had on my mind for quite some time now. What is the tried and true canon design for Willy Wonka? The one that represents not just the character, but everything that has spawned from him. The books, the movies, the company, and everything else. Of course, with such a popular character spanning many different media styles, there are going to be different iterations of him. The first was this eccentric old British dude in a plum-colored suit, green pants, and a black top hat, and of course he had facial hair, and he had pearly gloves. The 1971 version of Willy Wonka has a purple-colored suit, beige pants, an orangish top hat, and no gloves. The Wonka Company Wonka is sort of a weird mix of both. He has the purple coat, green pants, purple top hat for some reason, and he has the orange hair and giant nose that Gene Wilder had. There are even references to the 1971 film. Like a portion of the old website that was Wonka's office, everything in it is sliced in half, just like the movie. The 2005 version of Wonka shares more similarities with the original book version, such as the gloves and his plum-colored suit, but the 2005 Wonka has a more snarky, sarcastic attitude, and he has his infamous goggles that he is seen wearing throughout the film, even though pretty much every other version of Wonka only wears these goggles for the Wonkavision invention. There's the Mark Sweet of Willy Wonka, who has a slightly altered outfit with a different color palette, and he has this weird nerd puppet companion. I think the general majority can agree that Gene Wilder's portrayal of the character is pretty much the broad, definitive version, but then again, it is something to think about. Shadow Freddy singing Pure Imagination. This is from David Neer's Shadow Freddy voice headcanon video, where he has Shadow Freddy sing the lyric from the Pure Imagination song. That's literally it. 1997 Wonka Company tape. In July of 2020, YouTuber and collector ToonDesk uploaded a short where he showcased a rare Wonka Company tape, dated from 1997. The came tape with this really fancy multi-layer packaging that was almost like a pop-up book, and within it contains a bunch of facts, tidbits, and other stuff, and of course the mythical tape itself. ToonDesk claims that one of their friends was an ex-Nestle staff member, and that's how they were able to get a hold of the tape, since their friend was an ex-Nestle staff member. They'd have some insight into the company. There is so much to unpack here, so there may or may not be an analysis video on this in the future. However, the video on the actual tape itself has never been seen or uploaded by anyone publicly, so we can only speculate as to what juicy secrets could have been on it. SCP-4256. SCP-4256 is a safe class SCP that is a corn snake whose shed skin is 35mm nitrate film print. The films that these prints consist of are usually altered in some way to reflect the snake and its SCP nature. One of the most drastically changed movies shed from the snake was, you guessed it, the 1971 Wonka film. In this version of the film, Wonka was replaced by an SCP researcher, and all of the kids were replaced with snakes in kids' clothing. And all of the terminations of the characters were done in gruesome ways by the researcher playing Wonka. The only part that remained legitimately faithful to the 1971 film was the freaky boat scene. Wonka's secret recipe. I think we all know that Willy Wonka's crazy confectionaries just cannot happen in the real world, or at least most of them cannot. Sure, with advances in modern technology, some of them may be possible with enough innovation, but you gotta remember that the story takes place sometime during the 70s or 60s. How did Wonka create such amazing feats? Never melt ice cream, gobstoppers that last forever, gum that is able to perfectly emulate the taste and textures of chicken and potatoes, or a TV camera that can teleport and broadcast physical objects. I think the obvious answer would be pure imagination. Heck, it literally sums up Wonka's character. How else would he be able to produce such impossible feats of science? Well, it's science. That's where the sciencey realistic part comes in. There's simply no way Wonka could actually make these things, especially in the time frame of the books or any of the movies. Literally, only about a third of the classic chocolate room was made out of edible props, and only a portion of that chocolate river was actually chocolate, and it would most likely make you sick if you drank from it. And need I mention the quadruple-sized golden egg-laying geese that lay octuple-sized chocolate eggs? One part that I can't help but find suspicious, though, is something that most people will probably overlook. In the 1971 film, when one of the kids asks how Wonka is able to produce such improbable objects and inventions, Wonka straight up feigns ignorance and acts like he didn't hear them, or that the kid wasn't talking loud enough, and that he's partially deaf in one ear. I do know that this was done to not spoil the magical veil of the movie, but what about in-universe? What is the canon in-universe reason for Wonka doing this? Why does Wonka keep these things a secret? I don't know about you, but he's hiding something. A message from Willy Wonka himself. I remember being a little kid and loving the little bottle cap candies. They're these little chewable tablets that vaguely taste of how different flavors of soda taste. I actually remember these being off of store shelves for the longest time, and I was never aware as to why they were off store shelves until I did research for this video. One thing I do very vaguely remember is that there was a literal message from Willy Wonka himself on the back of the boxes. I can't remember what it said, I don't think I ever read it much, but from what I can infer, it's probably like this motivational speech for children. I have tried researching this, but I have found pretty much almost nothing that proves this ever existed at all. So I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering things, maybe the message was from a different character or brand entirely, I have no idea. If you guys do have any information about this, or remember if there was an actual message from Willy Wonka himself on his old candy boxes, please let me know. The 1971 film was cursed. As sort of the penultimate final entry, I present to you literally the only joke entry on this entire iceberg, the 1971 Wonka film having some sort of curse surrounding it. And can you really blame me for coming up with this concept? I mean, with everything that I talked about, from the actors being injured on stage to all the other crazy crap that happened during and after production, you can't help but wonder, is this movie cursed somehow? I have heard about the 1971 film being a gateway horror movie with all of its really bizarro and downright creepy elements, and the entire film is like Wet Dry World from Super Mario 64. It has this vibe to it that just feels off. This is especially true if you're watching it as an adult, especially if you know about all the accidents and controversies and mysteries surrounding the entire film. I mean, I'm not saying that the whole 1971 Willy Wonka is cursed theory shtick is true, nor am I saying that I outright believe in this theory, but It is something to think about. Willy Wonka is a psychopath. Here we are, the ultimate entry to this iceberg. And if you know anything about Wonka at all, you knew this entry was going to make it onto this iceberg somewhere, as it is the most popular theory pertaining to pretty much the entire Willy Wonka franchise. This theory states that Wonka is actually a crazed killer, trapping and potentially expiring the 5 kids, sans Charlie, for his own twisted amusement, and knighting Charlie as an heir to his throne so that all of the blame would be placed on him and not Wonka himself. This theory stems from Wonka's strange and solitary personality, as well as his sheer apathy towards the 4 kids' suspiciously ambiguous terminations from the factory tour, which led many to paint him as the ultimate social justice warrior of sorts, choosing and getting rid of all the ill-tempered kids in the world. Heck, the late XXXTentacion, rest in peace, named one of his albums after this theory. While I do enjoy twisted theories like this due to the sheer shock and horror factors therein, I don't legitimately believe in this theory. Like, in all seriousness, the Willy Wonka tale is one made for little kids, with a lot of whimsical and strange elements that come with it, and therefore some rather strange implications. I mean, in the original book in the 2005 film, the kids are shown to be alive and sort of well. So no, the whole Wonka is evil thing isn't really true, but that doesn't mean it's not good food for thought. I will admit, even I sometimes headcanon Wonka as this kind of crazy dude for fun sometimes. Who knows, maybe Wonka is evil. Maybe he does want to create a perfect world by eradicating all the ill-mannered kids on planet Earth. He probably advertises his candies for kids for reasons other than kids love candy. What about that secret ingredient that Wonka uses? Every time a kid asks how Wonka's techniques work, he just feigns ignorance and pretends like the kid just misspoke or something. He's clearly hiding something, as I said earlier. What if that ingredient isn't pure imagination at all? What if it's all some kind of crazed mad science experiment where Wonka is using brain-altering chemicals to induce good manners into all of his victims to create a world without bad manners and misused etiquette? Maybe. That's all why we're so accustomed to having good manners and behaviors. That Wonka candy you ate as a child, it's slowly been molding and changing your brain, turning you into a different person. That whimsical 70s film you watched as a child wasn't made to entertain children. It was made by Wonka himself to brainwash all of us into becoming etiquette-acquainted adults. The 2005 film? That was an attempt to brainwash a younger generation of kids, and the 2023 Timothée Chalamet film is going to do the exact same. Wonka's goal is to make candy to brainwash all planet Earth, to ensure world domination of a class of humans made to be well-behaved. And now that the truth is out there, I may not be alive much longer. Ever since I started doing research for the deeper parts of this iceberg, I felt like I was being watched by someone. A certain businessman, if you will. It started out as just him standing from a distance. Now it's escalated to the point where I can feel him right outside my bedroom window every night. While I'm still alive, please heed my warning. Wonka's plan is not in good nature. He's trying to kill any and every ill-behaved person on planet Earth. It's his quest to destroy us all as a society as we know it. Don't buy into the colorful aesthetic and visuals. It's all a facade. Don't be fooled! And that, my lovely viewers, was the ultimate Willy Wonka Iceberg. And don't worry, all that craziness at the end of the video was entirely a joke. You think that something like Willy Wonka wouldn't have so many weird and obscure facts and information surrounding it, the company, and pretty much everything else. But hey, things aren't always as they seem. The important stories that I have talked about are again listed in the description, and big special thanks to all the fine people you see on screen now. Thank you all so much for being able to provide me with the information for this iceberg. And thank you, my viewers, for taking the time to actually watch this video till the end. I really enjoyed making this massive iceberg and finding all of this Willy Wonka knowledge, big and small. Even though my narration was absolute trash, I apologize. Anyway, I hope you guys had a good time watching the video and learned something new today. Be expecting some more Wonka related content in the near future, but for now, peace on and have a wonderful day.